Layla Revillan was an exceptionally beautiful and well-behaved little girl. She once lived in a happy home with both a father and a mother. But who could have imagined her mother would have an affair with another man and abandon her family? Layla's father, unable to bear such a devastating blow, became a changed man, drowning his sorrows in alcohol day after day, until finally he succumbed to his misery and passed away. At the tender age of 12, Layla became an orphan, forced to rely on the charity of distant relatives, but their support couldn't last forever. So, she was entrusted by an uncle to Bill Lemur, the gardener of the Duke's estate, a man with no connection to Layla's family. What would Layla's new life be like in this unfamiliar land? Would she continue to endure the torment and disdain of others? Let's find out. The train was heading towards the outskirts of the city, where the scenery was beautiful and the air was fresh. Layla, when the flowers bloom in spring, let's go to the park together. Her father's frail face, his gentle smile, and that promise were all now things of the past. Spring no longer belonged to her. The life of an orphan dependent on relatives was truly miserable. Layla was constantly teased by the boys in the household. If you want to live in my house, you have to perform a welcoming ceremony. In these moments, she could only weakly protest. If you don't like it, then let go. One of them, growing irritated, snapped at her, "If you don't like it, get out." Her aunt's children tormented her whenever they had the chance, insulting Layla with cruel and contemptuous words. "Even if we are related, I'll still send you to the orphanage. Why should my family raise a child abandoned by her mother?" They didn't just torment her mentally with their words. Those children also inflicted physical pain. They pushed Layla into the lake without a shred of remorse. Layla sank deep into the lake, much like she was sinking into the despair life had dealt her. I struggled back home with my bruised and battered body, only to have my uncle's fist land squarely on me, causing red liquid to splatter across the floor. He angrily blamed all his misfortunes on a little girl. "It's all because of this spoiled brat. Ever since you came, misfortune has followed, especially on the days he lost everything at the gambling den." No one could stop his cruel abuse. Her aunt tried to intervene to stop his violence. "Please stop. Are you trying to kill her?" But once alcohol had its grip on him, not even heaven could stop him. The time she spent there was like hell, but a child with nowhere to go like her had no choice but to endure. However, misfortune piled up like snow overnight. Layla pleaded, her voice trembling and weak. "Auntie, I won't cause any trouble. I'll be obedient and do everything you ask of me. So please don't abandon me, Auntie." But the response to that pitiful plea was just a dismissive wave of the hand. "It's over, Layla. Go find other relatives for help." Layla looked up at her aunt, tears welling in her eyes. Her aunt, with no other option, made the painful decision. Wouldn't it be better somewhere else? Go on, be strong. On one of the coldest days of winter, she became a child with no place to call home. Afterward, she went to other relatives' homes, but Layla was met only with disdain and scornful words. "What's the use of raising a girl? It's just a waste of money. What did you do wrong to get kicked out? I have no intention of bringing a child like you into my home. Look, do you think we can help you in this situation? Cutting back on expenses isn't enough." No one wanted to take in the orphan child of a traitor, a child abandoned by her mother. Perhaps it wasn't coincidence, but when she was at her wit's end, a distant relative called out to her. Scribbling something on a piece of paper, he asked, "Do you know Berg?" Layla quickly replied, "Yes, sir." He handed her the paper and instructed, "Go there and find this person. I'll contact them in advance." Layla carefully read the information written on the paper. "And so, I left Ravita, the place of my birth and upbringing, boarded a train, crossed the border, and arrived in Berg." The train continued along the tracks, Layla sitting within, her expression bright with the anticipation of a brighter future. Carrying a sliver of hope tied to the unfamiliar name on the piece of paper, Layla finally arrived at Berg Cavalry Station. She slowly stepped off the train, her bag in hand, the platform bustling with people coming and going. Layla stood there for a long moment, gazing at her surroundings, a wave of anxiety washing over her. "So this is Berg. Will I be able to find him? What if I can't find this person? I can't go back to Ravita now." "No, don't think like that. This is the country where my father was born. Thanks to that, I can speak Bergian." Back when her family was still whole, her father had always been so proud of his daughter. "Layla, my daughter, is a genius." She quickly set about finding someone to ask for directions, telling herself, "It's all right. Everything will be fine." As she scanned the crowd for someone who could help, Layla spotted a postman passing by. "Excuse me," she called out quickly. "Mr. Postman, I need to go to the place written here. Could you please tell me the way?" The postman bent down to read the address on the paper. "Let me see. Bill Lemur, gardener to Duke Herhard. If it's him, I know him. I'm just on my way to the estate, so follow me." Layla smiled brightly, relieved that things were going so smoothly. "Yes, thank you so much, sir." Sitting in the carriage, Layla innocently admired the picturesque scenery along the way, everything filling her with a sense of exhilaration. The sadness in her heart seemed to melt away completely. That's the Duke's estate over there. This world is like a fairy tale. Is he the gardener of this beautiful mansion? What kind of person is he? Will he accept me? 1,000 questions swirled in Layla's mind. Suddenly, she stopped as she took in the scene before her. An older man was diligently tending the gardens. Layla knew this was the man she was looking for, so she quickly smoothed her hair and clothes, straightened her posture, and put on a bright, polite expression. Approaching him, she asked, "Excuse me, are you Mr. Bill Lemur?" The man stuck his shovel into the ground, pausing his work to confirm yes. Layla waited with bated breath to see his face. He looked at her, introducing himself. "I am Bill Lemur." His stern, somewhat fierce expression made Layla slightly apprehensive. "Calm down, I practiced this so many times on the train." Quickly regaining her composure, she confidently introduced herself. "Hello, Mr. Bill Lemur. My name is Layla Revillan. I'm from Ravida," she said with a bright smile, hoping to make a good impression. Bill thought to himself, Ravida? No wonder her pronunciation sounds so strange. He asked, "You mean you crossed the border?" Layla quickly replied, "Yes, by train." Bill, curious, got straight to the point. "So, what is it you want with me?" Mr. Bill's question caught Layla off guard. She stood there awkwardly. He had said he would contact him in advance. But perhaps Bill found it strange too, this little girl just standing there silently. Suddenly, the postman from earlier appeared, waving to Bill. "Did you find her?" Then he asked, "Did you bring this child here?" The postman explained, "Yes, I met her at the station. She said she was looking for Bill, so I brought her here. As it happens, I have a letter for you." Bill reached out to take the letter, the postman adding, "It seems to be from Ravida." Layla and Mr. Bill exchanged surprised glances. Bill carefully opened the letter and scanned its contents. "To Bill Lemur, a child will come to you. Her name is Layla Revillan, daughter of Albert Revillan. This girl's mother had an affair and left home long ago. As a result, Albert became addicted to alcohol and eventually died from his illness. So she moved in with relatives, but none of them could afford to keep her. My family is also dirt poor and can't afford another mouth to feed." Reading this far, Bill felt a growing unease, but he pressed on. "Although it's been a long time, I heard you're working as a gardener at the renowned Duke's estate. Among her distant relatives, I judged your situation to be the best, so I sent her there." Bill exploded, unable to contain his fury. What distant relative? We're barely related. Her father and I don't even remember each other. Now you want me to raise the child of a distant relative I haven't seen in over 20 years? Why send that little girl to Bill Lemur, a widower? At the end of the letter, Layla's uncle had added a postscript. "If the situation isn't ideal, send her to an orphanage." Bill crumpled the letter in his hand, frustrated by the position he'd been forced into. This damned fellow. How could he send a letter like this? What was he thinking? Is he even sane? Regardless of whether we're relatives, we're adults. How could he send a child on such a long journey all alone? Layla was deeply moved by the words of a stranger who seemed to care about her. Bill, too, recognized the selfishness of Layla's relatives. Right, whether she lives or dies in this remote place doesn't matter to you. He glanced at Layla, the picture of a forlorn child. It's still cold, and she's wearing so little. She looks as thin as a rail, like she hasn't had a proper meal in ages, traveling all this way with just a single bag. Bill covered his face with his hands, helpless in the face of this predicament. "Mr. Bill Lemur," Layla called out. He turned, his gaze settling on Layla with a sorrowful expression. Standing on her tiptoes as high as she could, she declared, "I'm not that small. I'll be 12 next week. I can read and write, and I can help with any kind of work." Bill's eyes widened in surprise at the sensible child before him. A sudden silence fell between them as the sun began to set. Mr. Bill gathered his things, preparing to head home. "Come with me," he said to Layla. We need to eat something before we decide anything else. Layla quickly followed behind Mr. Bill. By the time they reached the small house, it was completely dark. Inside, everything was neat and tidy. Layla looked around curiously. Aren't the other family members here? Suddenly, her eyes widened, as if realizing something. Could he be living alone? A short while later, Layla sat neatly at the dinner table, seeing that she had only taken a small portion. Mr. Bill asked her, "Is that all you're going to eat?" Layla quickly explained, "Yes, sir. I really don't eat much." Mr. Bill spoke bluntly. "I hate picky eaters. You have to be able to eat anything like a cow, at least." Layla was taken aback. It was the first time anyone had encouraged her to eat more. She reached out and took a larger helping of food. As she ate, Layla said, "Like a cow is a bit difficult, but I'm a good eater." Bill thought to himself that she seemed to have survived by being keenly perceptive. Suddenly, he turned serious, asking, "But aren't you afraid of this old man?" Layla smiled innocently, answering honestly, "You don't scold me or hit me, and you gave me such delicious food, so I'm very grateful to you. You're a good person." His heart was touched by her words. How has she lived to be so grateful for such small things? Those damned people. He slammed his cup down on the table in frustration. As pitiful as she is, it's absurd for me to raise this child. I need to decide what to do with this child by next week at the latest. But where am I supposed to send her? A new day dawned. Layla stood in front of the mirror, looking at herself. She recalled Mr. Bill's word from last night. "Stay here until you decide where you want to go." She was saddened to realize that this situation wasn't much better than before. As expected, it's the same this time. Where should I go now? Layla opened the door and stepped out of the room. The first thing she saw was Mr. Bill preparing breakfast. Layla greeted him with a bright smile. "Mr. Bill, did you sleep well?" He turned and replied, "Well enough." Then he turned his attention back to cooking. Layla stood there for a moment, unsure of what to do, before bustling about to find some chores to help with. "I'll bring these plates to the table." She carefully arranged the food on the table. Finally, the two sat down to enjoy breakfast together. "I'll eat well," she declared. Mr. Bill heaped a generous helping onto her plate. "Here, eat plenty." Layla's eyes widened in surprise at his thoughtfulness. She suddenly giggled. "Okay, I'll eat like a cow." Back at the Grand Estate, the servants gathered, buzzing with gossip. "Have you heard? Bill Lemur took in a little girl." The others gasped at the shocking news. Bill? A little girl? It would be more believable if he'd adopted a lion. Or an elephant. Truly, it's definitely a little girl. So strange. Ever since his wife passed, Bill's lived alone. He has no children. There must be something to it. If that rumor is true, isn't a big deal. How can a man as stiff as a board raise a little girl? Who knows? Maybe he'll take care of her better than we think. He's good at taking care of flowers. The best gardener, recognized by Duchess Norma herself. Maybe those qualities in his work will translate to childcare. Oh, children aren't the same as flowers. Anyway, it's none of my business. It's just a rumor, so let's not dwell on it. Suddenly, a young man standing by the window alerted the others. It seems it's not just a silly rumor. Look over there. Everyone rushed to the window, curious, jockeying for a better view. In the courtyard, Layla was carrying 2 potted plants, trailing behind Mr. Bill, helping him with his work. Those who witnessed the scene exclaimed, "Oh my goodness, it really is a little girl. Goodness, a little blonde girl. How old is she? Look at her running after him." But how did a child like that end up living with Mr. Bill? The curious tale of Layla Revillan, an orphan, quickly spread amongst the estate staff. Layla carefully brought flowers to the maids. "Here, I brought some flowers." Everyone was kind to her. "Thank you, Layla. Here, have these cookies." Layla asked, surprised, "For me?" The maid smiled. "Yes, enjoy them." Layla took the package of cookies, a happy smile blooming on her face. "Thank you. Goodbye, everyone." Having learned of Layla's unfortunate circumstances, everyone was touched. So, will she end up in an orphanage? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see what Bill Lemur decides. Whenever anyone asked about the child, Bill Lemur gave the same response. "I'm thinking about it. Since I can't keep her here, I need to think carefully." He pondered from spring all the way into summer. The sight of Layla trailing after Bill Lemur, helping people, gradually became familiar. The Jahard servants, observing the pair, came to a conclusion. Bill Lemur, Avis's best gardener, was a man whose talents began and ended with flowers. At Bill Lemur's house, Mona arrived with a basket. "What's this?" she asked excitedly. "Cookies and cake. The madam had a tea party yesterday." Bill stated bluntly, "I hate sweets." But her response left Bill speechless and embarrassed. "Oh, really? These are for Layla," Bill grumbled. "Lately, everyone's been using Layla as an excuse to come in and out of my house. Someone's happy." A kind maid gave Layla a pretty dress. "It was my sister's dress, but it's still new." She even brought books. "This is a detective novel." Others brought a plethora of stationery. Even the nanny, who'd never visited my house before. Occasionally, people come to see Layla, even when they have no business here. "It's giving me a headache," Mona remarked. "That's because Layla is naturally lovely. A polite and well-behaved child makes it impossible not to care for her." Like a playful squirrel flitting through the forest, the Duke's estate hadn't seen a child in ages. "Do you remember? Our Duke has been elegant since he was young." As the two chatted, Mona spotted Layla climbing a tree and shrieked in alarm. "Wait, Bill, what's she doing? Look over there. She's climbing a tree." Contrary to Mona's panicked demeanor, Bill simply sat calmly, unconcerned. He even offered a compliment. "I don't know who taught her, but that tree climbing technique is quite impressive." At this, Mona rounded on Bill, exasperated. "What are you saying? Did you teach her that? Bill Lemur, how can you raise a child like this?" He looked slightly taken aback, but declared confidently, "I'm raising her just fine." "Is there a problem?" Mona retorted, "Yes, but she's a girl. Simply doing delicate things like planting flowers isn't enough." "Goodness, don't tell me you plan to raise that sweet girl into a boy like you." The mere thought brought visible signs of horror to her face. "That's terrifying." Bill immediately refuted Mona's absurd notion, stating frankly, "You're thinking too much. She just needs to eat well and be healthy." Mona then asked softly, "Have you decided yet, anyway?" Bill feigned ignorance. "What are you talking about?" Mona pressed the issue regarding Layla. "Summer's here, and you still haven't decided where she's going?" Faced with this question, Bill chose to remain silent, offering no reply. He had intended to assess the child's situation within a week, but he still hadn't made a decision. Ultimately, there was no other option but to send her to an orphanage. But were orphanages reliable? Bill cared deeply for Layla, and whenever she went somewhere, he would carefully remind her, "Layla, don't go too far." She would cheerfully reply, "Yes, sir. I'll go to the riverbank and come back." Every time he saw Layla, Bill felt a pang of deep distress. Where should I take her? Can she grow up without being hurt again? It was a question with no easy answer. Lost in thought, Bill hadn't realized when summer had fully arrived. Under his warm, yet detached care, the child gradually grew. Layla loved admiring the beautiful northern forest. The birds fluttering through the forest felt like something out of a fairy tale, and Layla was a girl who adored birds. As the child grew, the forest also changed day by day, branches blossoming and bearing fruit. The weather warmed, and the animals expanded their territory, each day welcoming new life. Watching the light shimmer on the surface of the refuge river, this place suddenly felt like paradise, making the nightmarish time in Ravitas seem distant. Layla sat on her familiar branch, recording the things she saw each day. One day, when she had to leave this place just by opening this notebook, Layla innocently enjoyed the peaceful moments in this forest, even if misfortune were to strike again. After a day of wandering, Layla decided to head home. She swung open the door. "I'm home, Uncle." "Where are you going?" Uncle Bill said, "I have a few places to go, so I'm getting ready to head out." Layla hesitantly called out with worry, "Uncle." Seeing this, Uncle Bill immediately reassured her. "Don't make that face. I'm just going downtown to buy some new clothes." Layla asked curiously, "Clothes?" Uncle Bill explained, Duke Jawheart is coming back soon, and I can't have you greeting him looking like that." Sunlight dappled through the leaves as Layla walked alongside him, pondering. "Uncle, is the Duke the owner of this territory?" Uncle Bill replied, "That's right. The semester is almost over, and he'll be returning to the estate. He'll be staying in Avis for the summer." Layla asked, surprised, "If it's summer vacation, does the Duke go to school too?" Uncle Bill explained, "The Duke is only 18, so he has to attend school." Layla's eyes widened in astonishment. An 18-year-old Duke? Uncle Bill couldn't help but chuckle at the little girl's innocent expression. "Are you that surprised? Let me tell you something even more surprising. He became the Duke when he was about your age." Layla listened, increasingly amazed. "My age?" Suddenly, Bill's hand rested gently on Layla's head. At Bird Cavalry Station, everyone stood in a solemn line, awaiting the Duke's return. Finally, he arrived. The Duke appeared, radiating an effortless grace, his striking beauty rivaling that of a famous actor. Upon seeing him, the steward immediately bowed his head. "Welcome home, master. Allow me to escort you back to the estate." Those present were captivated by the Duke's dazzling presence, and they all escorted him back to the estate. Outside the station, the Duke paused, his gaze falling upon his waiting transport, a horse-drawn carriage. The steward confirmed, "Yes, master. Duchess Norma isn't quite comfortable with automobiles." The Duke smiled. "I know. She always considers automobiles to be vulgar and dangerous hunks of metal." Hearing this, the steward hastily apologized. "I'm terribly sorry, master. Next time I will." However, the Duke interjected with amusement. "It's all right. It's nice to experience the classics once in a while. Let's depart." The steward immediately responded, "Yes, master." On the estate grounds, everyone had also gathered to welcome the Duke. The carriage bearing the Duke was making its way through the streets of Berg. Inside the carriage, the steward meticulously briefed the Duke on necessary matters. "During your stay in Avis, we have a social gathering and a board meeting regarding merchant ship insurance." The steward continued speaking throughout the journey. The carriage passed by a place lined with 2 rows of lush green trees, and even from within, its tranquility and poetic beauty were evident. Seeing this beautiful scenery, the Duke couldn't hide his delight, a smile playing on his lips as he looked towards the estate. A stern voice admonished everyone. "No one is permitted to make any mistakes today, understood? Everything has been prepared, so do it properly." Layla thought to herself, "Is it because today is the day the Duke arrives?" Everyone seemed to be on edge. A maid turned to Layla. "Did you buy new clothes to greet the Duke?" She replied with an excited smile. "Yes, my uncle bought them for me." Hearing Layla's response, Uncle Bill's face remained impassive. An announcement rang out. "The Duke has arrived." The carriage came to a stop on the estate grounds, and the Duke's relatives emerged to welcome him back. Both his grandmother and mother were eagerly anticipating seeing their grandson and son after so many days apart. The Duke stepped down from the carriage, his expression serious. His grandmother spoke first. "Matthias, you're back." He immediately embraced his grandmother, replying, "Yes, grandmother. Are you well?" He then turned to embrace his mother. "Hello, mother." She smiled, praising him. "Matthias, you've grown taller again." His grandmother chuckled, addressing her grandson. "I prepared a meal. Let's go inside." Meanwhile, Layla stood as radiant as an angel. Throughout the entire proceeding, she only dared to look down at the ground, seeing only the feet of people passing by. After everyone had departed, Layla asked Uncle Bill, "Uncle, has the Duke gone inside?" He looked at her. "Regardless, you must greet him next time." She politely replied, "Yes, Uncle." On their way home, Layla chatted with Uncle Bill as they walked. "It's a shame. You prepared new clothes for me, but I didn't get to see him." He said, "Gillard often appears in the forest, so I'll ask permission first." She asked curiously, "Does the Duke like the forest?" He explained, "Generally speaking, he does. The Duke is very fond of hunting." Layla was quite surprised. "Hunting in the forest?" Uncle Bill calmly replied, "Well, isn't it obvious that the Duke hunts in the forest of his own territory?" She inquired further, "So, the Duke hunts birds too?" Uncle Bill said, "The Duke probably enjoys hunting birds the most. You'd be surprised if you saw the Duke shoot. Despite his young age, he's a remarkable marksman." Layla clutched her skirt, hesitantly saying, "Why shoot the birds? Even without hunting, there's plenty of food at the estate." Uncle Bill gently explained, "For the nobility, hunting is a pastime, and birds are the most interesting targets of all species." Layla's eyes began to well up. She said earnestly, "I wish the Duke wouldn't like hunting anymore." Her words surprised Uncle Bill. "Oh dear, don't say such difficult things." Bill asked again, firmly, "Could that ever happen?" But the answer to her question was Uncle Bill's resigned silence. A week later, in the Avis forest, Layla ran excitedly into the forest, drawn by the chirping of baby birds coming from the top of a tall tree. She quickly looked up to locate the sound, and in moments, she had climbed up to investigate. Finally, the eggs have hatched. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Layla spent the entire morning lying on the branch, observing them. "Are you hungry? Wait a moment. Your mother will be back with food soon." As she spoke, Layla slowly sat up. Old memories suddenly flooded her mind. "Mother, where are you going?" Back then, her mother had given her a gift, saying, "Layla, Mother has to go far away." Layla had innocently asked, "So, will Mother come back later?" Her mother had replied, "Very late." She had asked again, "Mother will be back by the time I finish this jar of candy, right?" Her mother had gently stroked Layla's cheek, answering, "Yes, that's right." Layla sat lost in these memories. Looking up at the sky, she suddenly noticed Mother Bird. The mother bird had returned, a worm clutched in its beak. Layla quickly moved away. "I have to get out of here. If I'm here, she'll be wary." Landing softly on the ground, Layla only dared to observe them from below. All 5 baby sparrows had hatched successfully, their feathers incredibly soft. At only 2 weeks old, they were already well developed. All of this was recorded in her diary. Layla said excitedly, "At this rate, I'll be able to see the baby birds fly soon." Her joy intensified. "I have to tell everyone." Suddenly, she heard the sound of a horse moving nearby, below her. Layla peered down curiously, trying to see who it was and if it was safe to come down. No, it's better to wait until he passes. Thinking this, she sat still in the tree, not daring to move a muscle. "I'll come down after he's gone." Unfortunately, Matthias chose that very tree to stop and rest. Layla leaned forward to see when he would leave, and her eyes lit up when she saw his face. But in her carelessness, Layla lost her grip and tumbled forward. Hearing the strange sound, Matthias quickly turned to see what it was. At the same time, he drew the gun he kept at the ready, aiming directly at the source of the noise. Seeing the gun, Layla was startled. "When I saw the Duke pointing the muzzle at me, was that a gun?" she thought in a panic. Frantically grabbing the tree trunk, Layla stammered, I was going to come down after you passed." Matthias lowered his gun and looked up, asking, "Who are you?" Layla trembled as she answered, I'm Revilen." He asked again, curiously, "What?" Mustering all her composure, she answered clearly, Layla Revilen." As soon as she finished speaking, she scrambled down and ran away. Seeing Layla running towards him, screaming as if chased by a ghost, Uncle Bill asked in surprise, "Layla, what's wrong?" She recounted her experience in a panic. "Uncle, I just met someone in the forest, and I think it was Duke Jard. Jet black hair, deep blue eyes. His voice as light as a feather, and he even had a gun. There might be more people coming later." After listening to Layla's story, Uncle Bill burst out laughing. "I told you, you must have run into Duke Jard hunting. I told you before, you might see the Duke often in the forest from now on. Did you greet him?" Layla was still shaken by the earlier encounter. Greet him? How? At the time, Layla had been a disheveled mess, not even properly introducing herself. Suddenly, Layla's eyes widened in realization. If that's the case, that person was the Duke. Elsewhere, the Duke had already raised his gun and begun to hunt. A loud gunshot startled Layla. That gunshot just now was hunting. The thought made Layla freeze. So he's hunting birds. Uncle Bill's words echoed in Layla's ears. The Duke probably enjoys shooting birds the most. You'd be amazed if you saw the Duke shoot. Despite his young age, he's a remarkable marksman. Involuntarily, Layla could only cry out in protest. No. Uncle Bill placed his hand on Layla's shoulder. "Come on, let's go inside." Seeing her standing there like a statue, he called again, "Layla." Tears of sadness rolled down Layla's face. Matthias von Jahard, heir to the most prestigious family under the imperial family, possessed the qualities and dignity of the highest nobility, his appearance elegant and harmonious. Everyone praised him as the Jahard family's masterpiece. It seemed everyone was proud of him and respected him. Only one person in the territory had a different opinion, Layla Revilen. That day, Layla rushed into the forest with this thought. If he's still in the forest, many birds will lose their lives because of him. The smaller and harder to catch the birds are, the more interesting they become, so they are perfect living targets. He doesn't even care about the prey he shoots. Even if they're soaked in blood or already dead, he just leaves them there and walks away. Not long ago, the mother sparrow had died while searching for food for her children, those chicks who had just lost their mother. Layla carefully wrapped their bodies in a handkerchief. The chicks gradually died. During the month the Duke hunted in the forest, they hadn't even left the nest once. Layla secretly buried the unfortunate birds and decided to nickname him the Beautiful Bird Hunter. Of course, that was just Layla's personal decision. No matter how many things happened, the Avis forest still maintained its picturesque beauty. Layla stood inside the house, gazing out the window at the new day. Uncle Bill also stood quietly, watching Layla for a long time. He understood her sadness as the birds continued to die. Bill suddenly approached Layla and held out his hand in front of her. She looked up at him with affectionate eyes. Seeing her adorable expression, Uncle Bill couldn't help but smile. Layla placed her small hand in his. Under a giant, ancient tree in the estate's garden, Layla spread out a blanket and sat in the shade. "Uncle is working in this hot weather. Is it okay for me to rest alone? But if I said I wanted to work? Uncle Bill had said sternly, I told you to sit here, Layla. If you follow me again, I'll be really angry. No matter how much she pleaded or what she did, he wouldn't change his mind. I really hate disobedient children. You know, faced with such a threat, Layla could only obey. After giving his instructions, Uncle Bill didn't forget to pat her head before leaving for work. If you get hungry, I'll call you later. Eat some peaches. A dejected Layla could only bury her face in her hands. Suddenly, a stranger approached where she was sitting. A young boy, upon seeing Layla, cheerfully greeted her. Hello. She looked up, a puzzled expression on her face. Who is this? I've never seen him before. The boy sat down next to Layla and began chatting as if they were old friends. Do you live here? Layla replied, Yes, I live here with Uncle Bill. He looked utterly surprised. Uncle Bill? Don't tell me it's that scary gardener. Layla quickly defended him. He's not scary at all. But the boy still couldn't shake his fear of Uncle Bill. Do you get that impression every time you see him? She countered. Do you live here too? He smiled brightly. No, I came with my dad. My dad is the Jawherd family's private doctor, and he came to check on the old madam today. Sometimes I come with my dad, and Madam Norma said it's okay. After hearing this, Layla could only reply, Oh, I see. The boy seemed to really like Layla, and she felt confused as he kept staring at her. He asked her curiously, How old are you? Layla shyly replied, 12. Hearing this, the boy laughed cheerfully. Same as me, but you look so small. When Layla heard his comment on her stature, she opened her mouth in surprise. So she bluntly replied, You're small too. Being called small by a girl, he immediately stood up to boast. What? No way. I'm the tallest in my class. Layla pouted. You're shorter than Uncle Bill anyway. Hearing her words, he replied in surprise. What? How can anyone be taller than that, uncle? Not even adults. Layla stubbornly insisted. No, small is small. He grumbled. Aren't you being too mean? The boy then changed the subject. The shade is really cool here. Hearing this, Layla silently guessed. Does this mean he's going to stay here? She glanced at the bag of peaches Uncle Bill had prepared. So she took out a knife and a peach, carefully and meticulously peeling it. Seeing this, the boy sitting next to her asked curiously, Is that a knife? You're so interesting. Why would a girl carry a knife in her bag? Layla said, Uncle Bill put it in there. Don't make fun of me. After cutting the peach, Layla offered half to him, asking, Would you like some peach? The boy immediately replied, Yes, thank you. As he spoke, he sniffed the aroma of the peach with his small nose. While eating, he asked, But why don't you look angry? Is something wrong? Layla hesitantly said, Well, the Duke and his friends have been hunting birds. He still didn't understand what she meant. So what? Layla said, They kill birds for fun. Thinking someone would share her sentiment, Layla was disappointed to find that this boy also held the same view as everyone else, that hunting was just a normal thing. Layla turned to him, her eyes filled with sadness. Do you think so too? The boy flinched and denied it. Oh no, I don't think so. I feel sorry for them. Animals can feel pain and sadness too. Layla naively believed his lie, thinking he was a different kind of person, but it turned out he was a good person. Seeing this, she offered him the remaining half of the large peach. Would you like some more peach? Unable to control his craving, he replied, Yes, this peach is so juicy and sweet. Layla smiled as she shared, I picked it in the forest. As they chatted happily, the boy's mother called out, Kyle, it's time to go home. He quickly stood up and said goodbye to his new friend. I have to go, Kyle Edmund. What's your name? Layla also stood up and shook his hand in greeting. I'm Layla Revillen. Kyle beamed. Layla Revillen. Nice to meet you, Layla. See you later, he said, waving goodbye to Layla. As Layla watched him leave, she wondered, will we meet again? Unexpectedly, at the same moment, Kyle turned back and shouted, Layla, I'll bring you some delicious treats next time. Layla smiled and waved goodbye, but a faint sadness filled her heart. Maybe I won't be here by then. It was best to leave those words unspoken. As soon as Kyle saw his mother, she asked curiously, Kyle, who was that girl? Kyle recounted excitedly. She lives with the gardener, and she's the same age as me, Mom. His mother gently placed her hand on her son's shoulder and looked back at the girl Kyle had just met. Is that so? Finally, Mr. Bill finished his work and called out, Layla, come down. Hearing the call, Layla quickly gathered her things and hurried down to Mr. Bill. Are you done, Uncle? He cautioned her gently. Slow down, don't fall. As they walked, Mr. Bill asked, Are you hungry? Layla politely replied, No, I ate a peach earlier. I met a boy just now. He's the same age as me. Layla stopped mid-sentence as someone walked past. It was the Duke and his friends. You're amazing. How can you hit every shot? Yeah, it's incredible to hit such small birds. Matthias also quickly recognized the girl he had encountered in the forest a few days prior. Seeing him looking at her, Layla became even more timid. Mr. Bill quickly bowed to the Duke. "Greetings, Your Grace." Matthias replied pleasantly, "It's been a while, Bill." Mr. Bill turned to introduce Layla. "I apologize for not informing you sooner, but I will be keeping this child at Avis temporarily. Although we have Madam's permission, I thought I should still inform you, Your Grace." Layla quickly lowered her head to show respect. One of Matthias's friends pointed at her and asked, "Is that the girl? The one who lives in the forest, always hiding behind trees, peeking at us, and secretly burying the birds?" Hearing this, Matthias glanced at Layla. He also recognized her as the child sitting in the tree he'd almost shot, mistaking her for a bird. Matthias agreed to Mr. Bill's request. "All right, do as you see fit, Bill." Mr. Bill bowed his head in gratitude. After the conversation, the Duke and his entourage left. When Layla looked up, she saw a servant carrying a dead pheasant. Witnessing the heartbreaking scene, Layla closed her eyes, out of sight, out of mind. Mr. Bill seemed to understand her feelings and quickly comforted her. "Layla, let's go home." She nodded. "Okay, Uncle." At Madame's tea table, young Claudine sat listlessly, lacking energy. Seeing this, her mother reminded her daughter, "Goodness, Claudine, act like a lady. Do you know where we are? Stop sighing like that." Claudine complained dejectedly, "I'm so lonely and bored." Her mother said with a smile, "Then go play with your brothers and come back." Claudine leaned back in her chair. "They treat me like I'm invisible, and they always talk about things I don't understand." Matthias's mother, also present, stroked her small dog and said, "Indeed, it is rather dull here. There's no one your age to befriend." Hearing this, Claudine turned to her mother and said, "See, Mother, Madame Jahard understands me." Claudine's mother frowned, silently signaling her to restrain herself. Claudine suddenly stood up and asked, "I've been curious. Who is that child? She seems to be around my age. Can I play with her?" Madame turned to look in the direction Claudine was pointing. "Let me see. Isn't that the orphan from abroad? I'm not sure she's a suitable company for you." Claudine replied with a smile, "It's all right, Madame Jahard. It's much more interesting than playing with a dog." Claudine's mother flushed. "Enough." Madame Jahard simply smiled and rang the bell beside her, summoning a servant. "Bring that child here. I mean the one the gardener is looking after." Upon receiving the order, the maid hurried out to call Mr. Bill. He turned and asked, "What is it?" She relayed Madame Jahard's request. "Madame Jahard asked me to bring Layla over." Mr. Bill felt a pang of anxiety. "Madame Jahard? Why suddenly?" She explained, "Miss Brant wants to play with Layla." Mr. Bill glanced at young Claudine. "Play? Why would a young noble lady, who wants for nothing, want to play with Layla?" It was Madame Jahard's order, so he couldn't refuse. Seeing Mr. Bill's worry for her, Layla said, "Uncle, I'll go see Madame and be right back." Left with no choice, he sighed in agreement. The maid led Layla to the gathering. "Madam, I've brought the child." All eyes fell on Layla. Seeing her up close for the first time, they noticed her beauty. Even Madame exclaimed, "What a lovely child." "All right, Claudine. Do you like her?" Claudine cheerfully replied, "Yes, thank you, Madame Jahard." Layla stood there, bewildered. What did this mean? Everyone here wore candy-colored clothes, but no one seemed curious about what she thought. Then, Madame Jahard immediately summoned another servant and gave an order. Layla was pulled away by the servant to a place she had never been before. The servant bathed Layla in a luxurious bathroom and dressed her in an unusually soft white dress, though the servant's handling was rough and clumsy. Layla endured it. It was necessary. Any small mistake could cause trouble for Mr. Bill. Once Layla was ready, the servant sternly instructed her, "Miss Claudine is Baron Brant's daughter, which means you cannot act carelessly. Remember that." The door finally opened, and the servant led Layla to Miss Claudine. "Miss, I've brought the child." Claudine, putting on a pretentious air, said to Layla, "Hello, come here. What's your name? How old are you?" Layla immediately replied, "I'm Layla, Mississippi. I'm 12 years old." Claudine was a little surprised. "Really? I thought you were younger. You look so small." Layla froze. This was the second time today someone had said she looked younger than she was. Layla tried to compose herself. "Think of Mr. Bill. I must endure." Claudine sat at the piano and cleared her throat. "Can you play the piano?" Layla shook her head. "No, Mississippi." It was the first time she had seen such a large piano. As expected of a rich young lady, she thought. Claudine began to play a melody for Layla. "Do you know this song?" she asked, singing as she played. Claudine stopped and turned to Layla. "Do you?" Layla answered honestly, "No, Mississippi. This is the first time I've heard it." Claudine moved on to talking about making artificial flowers, but Layla was still clueless about that as well. Through games like dice and cards, Layla remained completely lost. Claudine asked about one last game. "Do you know how to play chess?" The familiar answer came again. "No, Mississippi." Claudine sighed, her face full of disappointment. Suddenly, she uttered 3 words, so pitiful. Layla froze, sitting motionless like a statue. Claudine stood up and walked straight towards the door, her steps light. She stopped in front of Layla. Such an ignorant child. Layla clenched her fists. These unintentional words inadvertently hurt her. Claudine ignored her and walked straight to the door. "I was looking forward to having some fun. What a waste of time." Before leaving, she didn't forget to add one last insult. "No different from a dog." Layla lowered her head, not daring to show any emotion. Claudine left, leaving Layla alone in the spacious, empty room. Layla screamed internally. She really wanted to go home, back to Mr. Bill, but she still had to wait. The young lady might come back. "Uncle, it's like this, right?" At dusk, Layla finally left that suffocating room. She carefully went downstairs. "Miss said you can take this dress and this." A maid blocked her path, handing Layla a gold coin. Layla didn't understand, just staring at the gold coin in the maid's hand. The maid took Layla's hand and placed the coin in it. "Take it. You should be grateful for what your superiors give you, understand?" With that, she left. Layla looked at the gold coin in her hand, closing her fingers gently around it. Layla walked briskly, as if trying to escape this place. "Don't think about it anymore. Just go home quickly. After all, this kind of thing." Just a few steps later, Layla heard a familiar voice calling her name. She stopped and turned around, seeing, inevitably at this very moment, the young lady from earlier, Claudine. Why her of all people? Layla clearly heard the 3 people opposite them talking. Who is that? The gardener's child. At this moment, she truly felt fortunate the Duke wasn't present. Claudine called out to her with no malice, only wanting to say goodbye. "Be careful, Layla." Layla clenched her fists. Layla bowed her head to Miss Claudine, thinking only of escaping this strange and unsettling place. She ran as fast as her legs would carry her, desperate to leave. "Uncle is waiting for me too." Suddenly, her oversized shoes slipped and Layla lost her balance, tumbling forward. Layla winced in pain as the gold coin slipped from her hand and rolled away. It kept rolling, rattling several times. Just as it was about to come to a stop, a pair of shoes stepped on it. Looking at the gleaming leather shoes, Layla could guess who was standing before her. Leather shoes and gray trousers. Layla looked up to confirm. It was none other than the Duke. Looking into his eyes made Layla feel even smaller. Duke Matthias von Jahard made her feel her insignificance here. Layla bowed her head to him. She caught a glimpse of the Duke's red lips, as if curling into a wisp of smoke. Looking down at her bleeding foot, Layla became aware of the reality, and the physical pain miraculously vanished. What am I thinking about now? Layla's gaze fell on the gold coin on the ground. Duke von Jahard looked down as well. Miss Claudine's last words to Layla echoed in her mind. Layla reached out and picked up the coin. The young lady's insult rang in her ears, no different from a dog. The words stung deeply. Layla clutched the coin tightly, carefully stood up, bowed to the Duke, and ran away. Throughout the entire ordeal, her heart remained silent. On the way home, each step felt heavy, as if something was rising from the bottom of her heart, suffocating her. Through the forest path, she saw the warm light emanating from the house, beckoning like a bird in flight. Layla realized what it was. From a distance, she saw Mr. Bill standing at the doorway, waiting for her. The moment they met, the tears Layla had been holding back suddenly flowed. It was sadness. It was an ordinary morning, just like any other. Mr. Bill knocked on Layla's door. "Aren't you going to the forest today?" Layla replied with a smile. "I'm planning to stay home today, Uncle." Bill nodded. "All right." He closed the door and sighed deeply. It had been 2 days since the encounter with Miss Claudine, but Layla had kept herself locked in her room, and Bill was deeply worried. He walked absent-mindedly down the hallway, poured himself a glass of water in the kitchen, and sat at the table. Looking at the quiet atmosphere of the house, Bill couldn't help but feel a pang of sadness. Had this house always been this quiet? Bill frowned, lost in thought. During dinner, Layla suddenly handed the gold coin to Bill. "Uncle, this is for you. Miss Claudine gave it to me." Bill was surprised. He suddenly understood. "Now I understand why she's been so down since returning from the mansion." Bill put down his salad bowl and asked Layla, "Was it that noble young lady?" "Yes, but why would she give me this coin?" Layla immediately explained. "This could be a lot of money, so no matter how uncomfortable I felt, I couldn't throw it away. The image of her bowing at the Duke's feet flashed through her memory again. Layla pushed the thought aside and continued with a smile. I thought a lot about it and felt it wasn't right. But if it can help me repay you even a little, I want to give it to you. Bill didn't say anything, only recalling that day. Asterisk from the moment I saw Layla come home, so distraught, as if running away from someone. I guess she was hurt at the mansion. So even though I pretended not to know, it was out of fear of making her cry. Asterisk Bill berated himself. Damn it. But he told Layla, that's the money you earned, so you should keep it. Layla was surprised. Money I earned? How? Bill declared to Layla, yes, it's the money you earned after working, dealing with a board. The work of an aristocrat is very similar to what you do. You did well, so you can accept it with pride. That's right. Bill encouraged his niece proudly, even rewarding her with a large piece of meat. After receiving her uncle's encouragement, Layla's mood visibly improved. Really? Bill nodded, continuing with more encouraging words. That's right. Congratulations on entering the adult world. Layla admired the gold coin in her hand, her spirits temporarily buoyed. However, something still bothered her. But uncle, I'm still young. Bill immediately dismissed his niece's negative thoughts. If you can earn a living on your own, then you are an adult. Layla, you've already done that, even if it was only once, only one gold coin. There are many adults in this world who can't even earn this much in one go. Bill placed a large plate of food in front of Layla, making her gasp in surprise. A beginning like this is success. Because you've had a good start, you'll also become an excellent adult in the future. Mr. Bill's wonderful words of encouragement quickly lifted Layla's spirits from the depths of despair. Looking at the plate of food, Bill reminded her, you've been eating like a bird for days, so eat this. Remember, I like children who eat like a cow. Layla nodded, immediately picking up her fork to enjoy the meal. She didn't forget to ask, Uncle, if I eat well, will I grow taller? Bill nodded. Perhaps. What's wrong? Did someone say you're short? Layla pouted. No, but I look like a child. Bill chuckled, covering his mouth. Because you were a child. I just said you were an adult, and now I'm contradicting myself. Bill stood up, offering to get Layla some apple juice. She readily agreed. When Bill returned, Layla asked, by the way, Uncle, if this is the money I earned, can I use it freely? Bill nodded and immediately asked, of course, what do you want to do? Layla confessed, I want to buy a notebook. My old one is full. Bill naturally agreed, and Layla wants a new set of colored pencils. Bill didn't object to that either. Suddenly, Layla suggested to Bill, Uncle, don't you want to buy anything? Bill was slightly surprised, a smile spreading across his face. What, buy something for me? Yes. Bill chuckled dryly, looking at Layla with suspicion in his eyes. Believe it or not, what would you do if I told you I wanted something expensive? Layla replied excitedly. If that's the case, I'll work hard to earn a lot of money and save up to buy it for you, Uncle. Bill let out a hearty laugh, clinking glasses with Layla in satisfaction. I'll look forward to it. Bill glanced at his niece, pride evident in his expression. She's such a clever and lovely child, with a slender figure and delicate features. She'll surely become a beautiful young lady when she grows up. But that might not be a good thing. I think, in difficult circumstances, beauty is like poison. With no one to rely on, she'll easily fall into danger. The mere thought of it gave Bill a headache. Therefore, I plan to find a trustworthy place to send her. But what if I can't find such a place? Damn this terrible world and its despicable people. Despite these worries, Bill maintained a cheerful demeanor as he conversed with Layla. He asked if she wanted another drink, and Layla readily agreed. However, some concerns still lingered in Bill's mind. At this rate, will she become a drunkard when she grows up? No, this is only temporary, just temporary. Such days continued to pass, and after a long period of contemplation, Bill finally made a decision. Layla bid farewell to Bill before leaving. I'll be back, Uncle. Bill nodded, not forgetting to remind her, remember to be back before sunset. Layla nodded and left leisurely. One day, this adorable troublemaker unexpectedly appeared in my life. Layla grew amidst these thoughts, her new clothes becoming too small, her skin becoming increasingly fair. The room that was originally a temporary storage room now looked like a young lady's bedroom. The image of a child running on the trails became clearer. I don't know when it happened, but Layla is now like a rose I've cared for, a beautiful and vibrant young lady of 18. Layla picked a basket full of strawberries. Then she returned, basket in hand. Uncle, you're back early today. Bill, who had been waiting in front of the house for a while, greeted Layla with a smile. Layla smiled back, her beautiful face radiating sunshine. Still with Avis and Bill, Uncle, look at this. Layla excitedly showed Bill a basket brimming with strawberries. What's that? Layla replied excitedly. Wild strawberries. Look how many I picked. I'll go pick some more tomorrow, and we can make wild strawberry jam. Bill looked at the overflowing basket and jokingly asked, So many? Are you planning to sell the jam? Layla nodded thoughtfully. That's actually not a bad idea. Bill took out a few ripe, red peaches. I have some peaches. Would you like some? Yes, please, Layla replied. Bill cut a peach in half. He gave half to Layla, and the two of them enjoyed the fruit while admiring the scenery. It's summer now, so the peaches are ripe. Bright sunlight filtered through the leaves, and birds sang melodiously in the trees. Layla watched them intently, a strange sense of peace rising within her. Yes, summer is here again. As night fell, Layla sat at her desk, her vision blurring from long hours of reading. Layla rubbed her aching eyes wearily. This isn't good. The exams are coming soon, but my eyesight seems to be getting worse. If I save up a little more money, I'll be able to buy glasses. Layla immediately thought of business. 20 jars of strawberry jam. No, 30 jars. Wait, an idea. A thought suddenly flashed through her mind. Why not make wild strawberry jam too? All of this could fetch a good price, right? So tomorrow I'll go early and pick as many wild strawberries as possible. The idea instantly lifted Layla's spirits. Suddenly, Layla's door opened, and Uncle Bill poked his head in with a worried look. Layla, why are you still awake so late? He asked. Layla quickly replied, Yes, I was just planning to study a little longer before going to bed. Bill couldn't help but praise her. You're so diligent, but remember to sleep early and don't overwork yourself. Layla nodded and bid Bill good night. Bill left the room, gently closing the door behind him. Layla relit the candle, adjusting the brightness slightly. With renewed vigor, she returned to her studies. She recalled a time long ago when Bill first decided to send her to school and how strongly everyone around them had opposed it. Everyone thought it was pointless to send an orphan to school, believing that even if she continued to live there, she would only need to find a suitable husband or work as a maid for the Jukes family when she grew up. But Uncle Bill ignored all the prejudice around him and insisted on sending Layla to school. She remembered how ecstatic she and Bill had been when she first stepped through the school gates. He had reassured her, Layla, there's nothing to worry about. Come on. And so, step by step, Uncle Bill had guided her onto the path of knowledge. Layla gradually learned about the wonderful world outside, with new things to learn every day, and she was always happy when her curiosity was satisfied. Every evening, Layla would sit in the living room with Bill and share a day at school. He would always respond with a familiar look and the words, Layla, you will become a wonderful adult someday. This was Layla's favorite saying, and whenever she heard it, her eyes would sparkle. It was like a magic spell, and on the nights she heard these words, she would imagine her grown-up self and drift off to sleep. I want to show everyone that I've become the wonderful adult Uncle Bill said I would be. This is the first thing I can do to repay him. To achieve this, I must do well in this exam, and then there will be a happy summer vacation. This thought further fueled Layla's determination. But suddenly, she remembered something. Summer is coming again. That person Jukar had. Following family tradition, the Duke entered the Royal Military Academy after graduating university and was commissioned as an officer. Due to his service on the foreign front, he'd missed 2 consecutive summers of harvest. But this summer, he would return, marking the return of gunfire to the forest after many years. This was why Layla felt particularly melancholic. At Jill Girls Academy, Layla and her close friends were discussing their summer vacation plans. When asked, Layla vaguely replied that she would figure something out later. Suddenly, the trio spotted a familiar figure, a tall and handsome young man tilting his head, seemingly searching for someone. Layla, look, he's here again. Upon spotting Layla, the young man waved excitedly. From such a distance, Layla naturally couldn't see clearly, so she squinted. It was Kyle, calling her name cheerfully. A handsome young man appearing at a girls' school quickly drew everyone's attention to him. Layla recognized him, her eyes instantly brightening. She quickly bid farewell to her friends and departed. Guys, I'll go first. See you tomorrow, bye-bye. Layla walked directly towards Kyle, asking curiously, Why are you here? Why didn't you go to my house? It's more convenient this way, Kyle replied calmly. It's on the way anyway. But Layla understood. Although she had mentioned it in passing, Kyle still skipped his tennis club practice to pick her up, much to the annoyance of the club members. Why isn't Kyle here? Is he off to see that girl again? That's right, the club seniors and members always tease Kyle like this. Kyle blushed, quickly fanning himself with his shirt, having run all the way to see Layla as soon as possible. There's a vanilla ice cream shop you like on the way back. Do you want to get some? Layla readily agreed. Kyle always wanted to spend as much time with Layla as possible, so how could I just practice tennis? As they walked and ate their ice cream, Layla suggested, "There's a book I need to read. Let's go to the bookstore later." Layla continued to enjoy her ice cream. Every movement she made was under Kyle's watchful gaze. Meanwhile, the club members were clamoring to have his name removed from the club roster. However, tomorrow's troubles were left for tomorrow. Kyle went to the bookstore on the street without hesitation. Kyle looked around restlessly, while Layla focused on what she wanted. Kyle glanced at the page Layla was reading. "Is this the book you want to read?" Layla nodded in confirmation. "Yes, the migratory birds have returned, and I plan to record which birds will come back this holiday." "Right, you've always loved birds." Kyle stole glances at Layla. Her delicate features, petite figure, and intelligence. Kyle's eyes were filled with affection today. "Can I confess?" Layla, noticing his intense gaze, looked up at Kyle. He didn't say anything, just smiled gently, thinking to himself, "I really like you." Seeing Kyle staring at her without speaking, Layla asked curiously, "Kyle, is there something you want to tell me?" Kyle turned his face away awkwardly. No." He quickly changed the subject. "Have you chosen? Don't you want to look at other books?" Layla nodded. "Yes, just this one is enough. Let's go home now." Kyle followed behind, telling himself, "It's not the time yet, not the right moment." I'm not sure how Layla feels, so if I confess rashly, our long-standing friendship will become awkward, and I don't want that. Of course, Layla is becoming more and more beautiful, making it hard for me to hold back, but I'll try to be patient so I can continue to see that smile. Honestly, I also wonder if becoming lovers is necessary. We've known each other for so long. Wouldn't it be better to become husband and wife directly? These peaceful days now, we will surely become a loving couple in the future. Layla talked about her studies, while Kyle was still lost in thought about the distant future. Marriage. It should be appropriate to get married immediately after graduating from university, right? Kyle closed his eyes, picturing Layla in a wedding dress. He imagined that there probably wasn't a bride in the world more beautiful than Layla, the wife of Kyle Edmund. The mere thought brought a wide grin to his face, his cheeks flushing and his eyes sparkling with excitement. Unexpectedly, Layla turned to him. "Why are you smiling?" she asked, her sudden question catching him off guard. She added another sentence that left him stunned. "Is it that funny that I failed geometry?" "Well, you're usually good at it, so it's understandable that you wouldn't understand." Layla hopped on her bicycle and rode off, leaving Kyle scrambling after her, trying to explain. "Wait, Layla, it's not like that. I was thinking about something else." Layla ignored his explanation, pedaling faster, leaving Kyle panting in her wake. "Hey, wait." Finally, he caught the back of her bicycle, breathing a sigh of relief. "Let's go together." As they continued, Kyle suddenly asked, "Hey, did you hear the news?" "What news?" "I heard Jukarhat is coming back. It's been almost 2 years, right?" Layla's cheerful expression dimmed, a flicker of sadness in her eyes. Kyle, oblivious to the shift, continued casually, "I heard the servants at the mansion are all in a flurry. Aren't you interested?" The mention of the Duke brought painful memories flooding back. "I don't want to see him, especially not since that day." The day Layla knelt at Harhad's feet to pick up gold coins remained a lingering ache in her heart. Even though it was Miss Claudina who called me to the mansion, kept me there, and gave me the money, the Duke made me feel absolutely terrible. It's a different kind of scar than the contempt and oppression I endured from my relatives when I was young. Every time I see the Duke, I'm reminded of that day. I avoid him as much as possible, even when Miss Claudina visits the mansion and calls for me. It's only a brief passing. Even when a maid gives me the money, she never looks up. She always keeps her head down as much as possible so as not to see him. Even if Harad passes by, he can't see her face. Layla truly hated him. That memory is a scar I want to forget, but he keeps reminding me of it. Layla lowered her head, her eyes filled with sadness. Suddenly, Kyle stopped in front of her bicycle. "Layla," he asked, "could I become an officer?" Layla was surprised. "An officer?" Kyle immediately began to boast. "Become an officer like Jukarhat, when the sharpshooter medal hit every enemy with every shot. Captain Edmund, pretty cool, right?" Kyle grinned slyly. Immediately, Layla cut him off. "Kyle, have you forgotten? You can't even kill a chicken." His daydream shattered by Layla's blunt words. Kyle was brought back to reality, embarrassed. Why bring that up? The story went back to last year. After visiting Layla's house, as usual one fine day, Kyle incurred the wrath of Uncle Bill. "Kyle Edmund, why do you come to my house every day?" Uncle Bill grabbed Kyle by the collar, scolding him angrily. A rich young master like you. Why do you insist on eating here instead of at home? It's too much. No, you're not allowed to come to my house anymore. Kyle was terrified by the ban, screaming internally, "No, Uncle, only here can I be with Layla. I at least need an excuse to study together." But outwardly, he had to say something different. "Uncle, I'll pay for the meals. Please feel free to ask me to do anything." Bill frowned. He couldn't refuse such sincerity. "Is that so? Come here." Bill took Kyle to the chicken coop, where his first assigned task was to prepare the ingredients for dinner. Kyle was thoroughly defeated by a chicken, a memorable experience. He was then scolded by Uncle Bill. "This boy can't even catch a chicken. He truly is a useless waste of the Edmund family." Kyle froze, tears welling up in his eyes. He was so dejected that Layla had to pull him aside to comfort him. Since then, the Edmund family's nickname for Kyle, Useless Lava, had haunted him ever since that day. "You know, he hasn't called me by my real name since then. Why Lava of all things?" Layla burst out laughing, teasing Kyle mercilessly. "Gentle Lava," Kyle sighed, exasperated. "Even you," Layla explained, "I cherish you because you're just like that. Are you making fun of me?" Layla's expression turned serious. "No, really. I hope these hands will save lives, not hold a gun. Wouldn't that be better?" Kyle replied, touched. "Of course, I'll become a doctor." But he hadn't forgotten his burning desire for a medal. "If that's the case, I'll become a military doctor." "Can military doctors get medals?" Layla interjected. "Of course. It's a noble job saving people, isn't it?" Despite his words, Kyle still seemed doubtful. "Is that really so?" Suddenly, a car appeared in their line of sight. Kyle and Layla stepped aside, giving it the right of way. The car slowly passed them, revealing a familiar figure inside. Layla's nemesis, Duke Harhad. He had indeed returned. It was unclear whether he had actually seen them. The car continued down the road, moving further away. Kyle and Layla began to discuss it. "Was that Lady Norma?" Layla immediately denied it. "No, I'm sure it wasn't her. I heard she doesn't like cars." Kyle was still pondering. The current car models are a combination of technology and style. Layla didn't understand what he was talking about. Kyle suddenly exclaimed, "All right, what is it?" Kyle rummaged through his bag, realizing he had forgotten something for Layla. "I meant to show you my geometry notebook, but I left it at home today." Layla narrowed her eyes. Making sure she'd heard correctly, she asked, "Really?" Kyle answered honestly, "Yes, I left it on my desk." Layla turned 180 degrees and instructed him carefully. "Then I'll wait for you at home. Remember to come over for dinner on time. You must bring it to me." Kyle called after her, "Hey, are you waiting for me or the notebook?" Layla replied coldly, "The notebook, of course." This harsh truth saddened Kyle. "Anyway, I'll hurry home and come over." Layla responded, "Take your time. It'll take a while to make dinner anyway." Kyle sighed. "I know. See you later." Layla watched her friend's retreating figure, a small smile playing on her lips. She continued cycling naturally, lost in thought. "What should I make tonight?" Layla rode leisurely along the sun-drenched road, the calm before the storm. Hart gazed out the car window at the bright sunlight. After a moment of contemplation, he called out, "Hassan." The man turned around. "Yes, Your Grace." Harhad's request to stop the car startled Hassan. He had to double-check he'd heard correctly. "You mean to stop here, Your Grace?" Harhad looked at him firmly and replied, "Yes, I want to take a walk." The car screeched to a halt. After letting the Duke out, Hassan continued, "Then I'll wait for you nearby." Harhad declined. "No, I'm going to walk." The Duke's strange behavior made Hassan break out in a cold sweat. "What's going on?" His Grace returned a week earlier than expected, so the mansion servants are already in a frenzy, and now he suddenly wants to take a walk alone. Hassan was about to say something, but the Duke interrupted him. "No, we'll meet at the mansion." Since his master had spoken, Hassan had no choice. "Yes, I understand, Your Grace." Under the bright sunlight, filtering through the shade of the trees, Harhad removed his hat. Strolling leisurely along the road, he closed his eyes, enjoying the fresh air he hadn't experienced in a while. Suddenly, a conversation flooded Harhad's memory. His mother had once suggested to him, "Matthias, will you be getting engaged this summer?" Harhad readily agreed. "It's time to marry and have children." She offered to find him a suitable young lady from a good family. "I believe Miss Claudina is the most suitable candidate for the next Duchess." Harhad accepted her suggestion, as Claudina von Brandt was a young lady of suitable lineage and standing. Seeing her son agree to the arrangement, his mother had been overjoyed. "Then I'll arrange for Miss Brandt to sit next to you at the harvest welcome ceremony." Harhad hadn't objected, wholeheartedly agreed. Life is like that, isn't it? Even without desires or ambitions, everything is perfectly arranged. A perfect life, so apparent it's almost boring. The perfect figure in this lifetime, from a perfect student to a perfect officer, and now I will marry a perfect woman, become a perfect father. As Duke Harad, I will help the family continue to thrive, just as my grandfather and father did. Yes, just at that moment, a figure on a bicycle approached. Layla rode leisurely, her face brimming with joy, passing by the Duke like a gust of wind. Layla felt the person looked somewhat familiar. She turned her head to look, and the figure before her eyes startled her. Duke Harad. Her handlebars immediately wobbled, and Layla screamed before tumbling to the ground. The bicycle, following its momentum, also fell to the ground. Fortunately, it didn't land on her. Layla and her belongings were scattered everywhere. Harad looked at the girl before him, suddenly feeling as if he had seen her somewhere before. Her distinct golden hair reminded him of that child, the one the gardener had asked to keep, the little girl who wandered through the forest all day, burying dead birds. Layla Revelin. Did she still live on this estate? Layla looked up at Harad. His eyes also focused on her. Layla jumped up and respectfully apologized to the Duke. Layla's gaze fell upon the items on the ground, and only then did she realize that all her books were scattered. Layla sat down, picking up each book one by one, her movements observed by Harad. After a moment of hesitation, he decided to speak. "Are you Layla Revelin?" Hearing her name, Layla froze. But she continued to pick up her books, apologizing to the Duke. Harad felt a flicker of annoyance. Just as Layla was about to pick up the remaining pen, Harad coldly stepped on it. Layla froze, trembling as she tried to pull the pen towards herself. But to no avail. Harad coldly commanded, "Layla Revelin, I am addressing you." Layla clenched her hand and boldly replied, "Yes, Your Grace. Please, I am listening." Harhad's eyes widened momentarily, and he looked at Layla for a few seconds. Then he retracted his foot, allowing her to retrieve her item. Harad said nothing, swiftly brushing past Layla, leaving her slightly stunned. "Why didn't you say anything?" Her hand holding the pen trembled. Layla spun around to look at Harhad's retreating back, thinking angrily, "Then why did you do that? Do people know that the perfect Duke, praised by all, would act this way?" Harad put on his officer's cap and calmly walked forward. After gathering her belongings, Layla quietly followed behind him, pushing her bicycle. The wheels rolled along the road, her leg, sore from the fall, still throbbing. But Layla's apprehension overshadowed everything. Seeing his leisurely manner, Layla speculated, is he planning to walk all the way to the mansion from here? I hope those long legs of his carry him faster. Layla couldn't just overtake him. Sunlight still filtered through the leaves. Suddenly, Harad stopped, and Layla quickly did the same. She looked nervously at Harad, who stared back at Layla with a steady, scrutinizing gaze. Time had passed. The child had grown, no longer a little girl, but a woman. Layla Revelin. Roses were the national flower and pride of the Bird Mansion. They bloomed in vibrant colors. Every summer, the Duke would return to his estate, making the servants busier each time he came back. Many guests would come to the mansion, attending various parties or meetings. Their hard work was a testament to their master's character. Count Brandt, the second most prestigious noble in Berg, second only to the Harad family, was one of the esteemed guests who needed a special welcome when they arrived. Duke Harad was already at the door to greet them. "Please come in," Count Brandt said, politely shaking his hand. "It's been a while, Duke Harad and Madam." On the surface, the Brandt family had been invited to the estate to welcome the summer together, but everyone knew the real reason for their visit to Avis was the Count's only daughter, Claudina. Duke Harad looked up to greet her arrival. Claudina stepped gracefully from the carriage, offering a gentle smile to her escort. "Hello, Duke Harad," she said. The Duke nodded in return. "Hello, Miss Brandt." Before the engagement could be announced, the two families needed to confer to foster a sense of mutual amity. Claudina understood this better than anyone, so she always presented herself in the most formal and appropriate manner. "The greenhouse always looks so beautiful," she remarked. "Madame Harad must have brought a piece of heaven here." Madame Harad, naturally pleased with her prospective daughter-in-law, replied, "I've tended it carefully for a very long time. I hope to pass it on to someone who understands its value." Her warmth made the Brandt family feel cherished. After some conversation, Madame Harad expressed a desire for the young couple to have some time alone. "Matthias," she said, "please show Miss Claudina around the Avis Gardens. We have some matters to discuss." The Brandt family readily agreed to Madame Harhad's suggestion, and Matthias quickly rose to his feet. He approached Miss Claudina and extended his hand. "Shall we?" Claudina placed her hand in Matthias's. A fleeting memory of another, smaller hand flickered through his mind, but his expression remained impassive. Certainly, Duke had, Claudina replied. The little girl of years past had blossomed into a perfect lady. Matthias escorted Claudina formally, just as he had when they first met. There was nothing new between them, neither closeness nor distance. They had known each other for far too long, and so they both understood. The handsome Duke Matthias Harhad and Miss Claudina Brandt were aristocrats to their very core. They had chosen each other in this political marriage, and that was the biggest and clearest reason of all. As they strolled through the Avis Gardens, small birds continually landed near Claudina, prompting her to exclaim, "The birds here are so beautiful. I can hardly believe they follow people so readily. Is there a secret?" Matthias nodded to the gardener to explain. "Their wings are clipped." Miss Claudina stroked the small bird perched on her hand. "Their wings? Doesn't it hurt them?" The gardener shook his head. "No, because I only trim their feathers. Are you curious? I can demonstrate." Claudina tilted her head and looked at Matthias. "Would that be all right, Duke Harhad?" He indulged her completely. "As you wish, Mississippi." A servant quickly prepared the necessary tools. The gardener approached a large nearby cage, a small yellow bird in his hand. Its diminutive size caught Matthias's attention. "What kind of bird is that?" he inquired. "A canary, sir," the gardener explained. "They have a very beautiful song." The small bird was held securely, a cloth placed over its eyes. The gardener spread one of its wings with one hand, holding shears in the other. Though they have little contact with humans, they are still very alert. If you trim the feathers on both sides of their wings, preventing them from flying too far or hiding, they become much more docile. Claudina asked curiously, "Do they really have to be clipped?" As he always did, the gardener clipped the feathers with a firm hand. Birds that can fly freely are difficult for humans to tame. Trimming them like this also helps prevent them from getting lost or flying into dangerous places. They aren't hurt, so it's for their own good as well. Quickly, the bird's feathers were trimmed. Released from the gardener's hand, it flapped its wings furiously, struggling, but it couldn't fly far and quickly landed on the table. The bird beat its wings again, attempting to fly, but once more quickly fell to the ground. The little canary cocked its head, looking at the large shoes before it. Matthias reached down and picked it up. The small bird chirped immediately, struggling to escape his grasp. The gardener hurried forward to catch it. "Oh, sir, it cannot be tamed at once. It needs more time to adjust." The gardener held the lively bird out to Claudina. Would the young lady like to tame it? But she smiled and declined. "It is enough to just look. Thank you for answering my question." Then she turned to Matthias. "Shall we go back now, Duke Harhad?" The Duke paused, looking at her outstretched hand, then politely took it. An image of a small hand holding a pen flickered across his mind, but Matthias chose to ignore it, turning to leave with Claudina. Halfway there, he suddenly commanded the gardener, "Bring it to my bedroom." The gardener looked at Matthias, a little confused. "What, sir?" The Duke replied with a calm expression. "That bird, my canary." He was referring to the small bird in the gardener's hands. On a beautiful day, bathed in sunlight, there was a young girl whose radiance rivaled the sun. That morning, Layla, while helping arrange flowers for the Harhad estate, chatted with the maids. "Thank you, Layla. That must have been heavy." "It wasn't heavy, but it seems someone is coming to the estate." The maid nodded. "The Brandt family is coming." Layla gasped, thinking, "So Lady Claudina is coming this year as well?" "Yes, because the Duke has returned to the estate." The maid whispered in Layla's ear, "Hey, you know, the Duke and Lady Brandt are getting engaged." Layla, utterly surprised, repeated, "Engaged?" The maid elaborated, "Yes, I used to wonder who would be the perfect bride for our Duke." Finally, the Viscountess's visits have borne fruit. After that conversation, Layla went to her berry patch. As usual, when the Duke returned, the forest remained quiet, probably because he was busy with engagement matters. "So, I must finish today, before the Duke takes over the forest." Layla quickly picked red berries from the bushes, before Lady Claudina calls for me more frequently. She poured all the berries into the large basket she had brought. On that same day, the Duke's carriage also returned to the estate. The butler went out to greet him. "Sir, I have prepared everything you need at the villa. We have a meeting with the directors in the afternoon, so the carriage will come to pick you up around noon." Duke Matthias got out of the carriage and nodded in acknowledgement. It was a place where one could see a panoramic view of the Scheldt River in the Avis forest. Matthias preferred a different style, so he had remodeled the boathouse into his own private villa, as he and his mother rarely went down to the riverbank. The Duke climbed the stairs with his long legs, slowly taking off his heavy vest. This villa was his own world. When he had no schedule, he often stayed here, leisurely enjoying the scenery of the forest and the river, or reading, sometimes even taking a nap here. The villa was a place where he could comfortably do anything. Today was no exception. After resting and reading on the sofa, Matthias put down his book and went to change his clothes. He liked to swim in the river at this time. Matthias placed his bathrobe on a chair, then carefully stretched his body, took a short run, and jumped into the water, glistening under the sun. The moment he immersed himself in the river, the sky between the lush green trees, the rustling sound of leaves in the wind, the singing of birds, and the clamorous engagement talks that people had been mentioning for the past few days all gradually faded away in the tranquil river. The marriage negotiations between the Harhat and Brandt families were proceeding smoothly as planned. The engagement period was set for 1 year, and in the summer, their engagement would be officially announced. He'd achieved the position of Duke Harhat with enough time to spare, not needing to remain a military officer for long. 2 years in the Royal Guard, then retirement upon marriage. That was the plan, a plan to focus on the family business, and so far, it had held true. His life flowed smoothly, like a placid river, everything proceeding according to his design. But who could have predicted the unexpected ripple? That day, Layla, perched in an apple tree by the river, reading a newspaper, was startled by the sight of Duke Matthias. The newspaper slipped from her grasp. This was how fate chose for them to meet again. And it was that very newspaper that alerted the Duke to her presence. There, by the riverbank, a girl sat high in the branches, staring at him. Layla thought her eyes were deceiving her and rubbed them several times. When she opened them again, the naked man bathing in the river was still there. What was that? A person, a man, but a naked man. Could it be Duke Harhat? Layla was shocked. Heavens, it really was the Duke. What on earth was he doing there? Matthias ran a hand through his wet hair, slicking it back from his forehead. His charisma was such that even as Layla covered her eyes, she still peeked through her fingers. No, don't look, close your eyes. She hadn't expected the Duke to start swimming towards her. Layla blushed crimson, then panicked. Keep swimming. Why was he coming this way? No, don't come any closer. Oh, please don't come any closer. Layla was so frightened she almost screamed. She scrambled down from her perch and ran. She ran without looking back, colliding with Kyle, who had been searching for her. Kyle called out with a smile, "Thank goodness, I was just coming to find you." "My uncle said you were—" He didn't get to finish his sentence before Layla crashed into his chest. Kyle exclaimed, "Layla, are you all right? What's wrong? Why are you running so fast?" She gasped for breath, unable to form a coherent sentence. Kyle, too, became anxious. "What is it? Did something happen in the forest? Did you encounter a wild animal in the forest?" At Kyle's questioning, the vivid image of the Duke flashed back into her mind. Layla felt so embarrassed she wanted to faint. "No, but I would have preferred a wild animal." Kyle's worry intensified. "Hey, calm down, Layla. What's wrong? If it wasn't a gorilla, did you see a ghost?" Layla thought, no, something much worse. Kyle tilted his head, looking at her. "But you said you were going to pick wild strawberries." Suddenly, she remembered the fruits of her labor from that morning. "Oh, my wild strawberries." Kyle asked again, "I don't know why you're like this, but if that's the case, I'll go back with you and get them, okay?" But at his offer, Layla refused in a panic. "No, thank you." She hurried off without further explanation. Under the tree, 2 baskets brimming with wild strawberries and the discarded newspaper remained, testament to their owner's hasty departure. Duke Matthias strolled over. With one hand in his pocket, he looked at the items the girl had left behind. Matthias sat down to examine them. Wild strawberries. Is she planning to pick every single wild strawberry on this bare mountain? Then he looked up at the high branches, the spot where he had seen Layla. Memories surfaced of times when, as a child, he had come to this very spot to call Layla down. It's little Layla Revelin. Matthias's expression softened. He chuckled softly. Does she still enjoy climbing trees like that? A few days later, Layla went into town. She went to get a pair of glasses. The shopkeeper handed her a pair of round frames to try on. Can you see clearly with these? Layla's blue eyes blinked behind the yellow rims. It feels like a whole new world has opened up to me. The shopkeeper nodded in agreement. That's understandable. Your eyesight is quite poor. It must have been inconvenient for you lately. Layla was very pleased with the glasses. Apart from the inconvenience when reading, it's been all right. The shopkeeper pointed to the eye chart, checking her vision one last time. Now try reading this small line. Can you make it out? Layla replied cheerfully. It's perfectly clear. These glasses are very important to me. Layla thought, a quiet pride swelling in her chest. Finally, I have glasses I bought with my own money. Thank you, Avis Wild Strawberries. I've been diligently making strawberry jam to earn the money for these. Despite the summer heat, Layla, her new spectacles perched on her nose, waved goodbye to the shopkeeper. See you later, uncle. The shopkeeper called back warmly. Come again. But as Layla walked, a shadow fell over her bright mood. Why, on such a beautiful sunny day, am I remembering that embarrassing memory? It's a shame I only just got my glasses today. And for the Duke, too, even if it was his own land. How could he swim naked in broad daylight? What if someone had seen him? From now on, I shouldn't wander by the river until the Duke leaves. It's a shame I can't go to my favorite spot, but I absolutely cannot run into him again. Just then, someone called Layla's name. She stopped, recognizing the familiar voice. Could that be Lady Claudina? Layla turned to look. The first person to come into view was the very Duke Matthias she was trying to avoid. Layla instinctively flinched. A blush crept up her cheeks. Then, Claudina peeked out from beside him. It's been a while, Layla. Layla immediately lowered her head. Good day, your grace, my lady. She sighed inwardly. It's only been such a short time since we last met, and he's already transformed back into a proper gentleman. Claudina greeted her warmly. Your glasses almost made me not recognize you. How have you been? Layla replied. Yes, I've been well, my lady. The young lady then extended a friendly invitation. We're just about to have tea at that hotel over there. Would you like to join us, Layla? It's been a while. Let's have a cup of tea together. The unexpected invitation took Layla by surprise. Me? Claudina didn't forget to consult Matthias. Is that all right, Dukar had? He nodded his consent, and Claudina led the way. Come with me. Layla, unable to refuse, followed. Yes, my lady. Layla thought to herself. Just for a little while, right? I have an appointment with Kyle in town. Thankfully, there's still time. But why does my lady want me to come along? I have nothing to say. Even if I don't understand, I'm not curious about the reason. Even though we're in the same space, my presence is as insignificant as it was when I was 12. Today, I just need to accept it. Layla looked at the person across from her. Thanks to my glasses, I can see the Duke sitting opposite me much more clearly. His eyes, ever since I was little, every time I looked into the Duke's crystal blue eyes, I naively thought they were as clear as a piece of music. But now, I feel incredibly shy. Layla felt completely unnatural. I just decided to avoid him, and now I'm sitting face to face like this. But why am I the only one who feels embarrassed? Doesn't the Duke feel ashamed about that day? Normally, being seen like that would be awkward, wouldn't it? Come to think of it, I think I've heard before that, to nobles, commoners are no different from objects. If that's the case, then it's not hard to understand. Who would feel embarrassed in front of an object? And no object will be embarrassed to see someone naked. So right now, I'm just an object, an inanimate thing. Claudina continued the conversation. Layla, how is school? Are you having fun? Layla, her gaze lowered, replied, Yes, my lady. The young lady asked again, What do you plan to do after graduation? Layla didn't hide her aspirations. I'm taking classes to get my teaching certificate. Claudina seemed surprised by her plans. A teaching career? A teacher? That's a wonderful plan. It seems to suit you well, doesn't it? Dukar had. Layla glanced at Matthias, who nodded politely. Yes. Something seemed to sink in Layla's heart. Claudina's voice continued. For this banquet, I think it should be like this. What do you think about inviting the ladies from each family? Amidst the young couple's exchange, Layla remained silent, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. There was no room for her to interject. After a while, Layla stood up. Please excuse me, your grace, my lady. May I take my leave? I have an appointment with a friend later. Claudina looked at her kindly. Is that so? Then you may go. It was nice seeing you today, Layla. Layla bowed her head respectfully. Then I'll excuse myself. With those words, she turned sharply and left. Matthias only glanced at her retreating figure. Then his gaze fell upon Layla's untouched cup of tea. Layla's lunch companion was Kyle. He laughed aloud when he saw her new spectacles. Did you pick every strawberry on the mountain to make jam and sell it? Congratulations on achieving your goal, Revelin. Layla pushed her glasses up her nose. Don't tease me. Why do you keep laughing at me? Do I look strange wearing these? I'm still not used to them. Kyle mischievously plucked the glasses from Layla's face. You know, your eyes look as big as a mouse's when you wear those. Playfully exasperated, Layla grabbed his collar. Kyle, laughing, pleaded for mercy. Hey, I get it. You're just like Uncle Bill when you do that. Come on, let's eat quickly. I'm starving after playing tennis. Kyle handed Layla a bottle of water. Drink this while we eat. At that moment, Duke Matthias's carriage pulled to a stop at the side of the road. Claudina inquired, Is there a traffic jam? The coachman replied, Yes, my lady. It seems another carriage is blocking the road ahead. Beside her, the Duke gazed intently out the window. He caught sight of a familiar figure. So it was a date with that boy. Across the street, Layla and Kyle were sharing jokes and lunch. That boy is Kyle Edmund, the chief physician's son. Matthias observed him for a moment longer. In the cafe, Layla hadn't touched her teacup, her hands resting in her lap as she sat quietly, then slipped away discreetly. Her expression was uneasy and uncomfortable, as if she wanted to flee. Shafts of sunlight filtered through the roadside trees and into the carriage window, causing the Duke's eyes to gleam. An image of Layla as a child surfaced in his mind. Back when he was in the army, Layla wouldn't have run off like that to be with that boy. The sight of Kyle smiling at Layla's side stung Matthias's heart. It's because she wanted to be with that boy that she left my side. The smile she shares with him is so bright. To be with that boy in the days to come. Layla's presence had been noted by Lady Brant, who didn't look pleased. Isn't that the child, the orphan the gardener took in? Does she still live here? Claudina, holding her embroidery frame, replied, Yes, mother, that's her. She's quite lovely, isn't she? The older she gets, the more beautiful she becomes. Lady Brant frowned at her daughter. Haven't you noticed? Lady Claudina smiled. How could I not? I know she's beautiful. I haven't seen her in a while, but Layla is even lovelier than I imagined. She's petite, with the delicate features typical of Levitan women, those mysterious blue eyes, and such fair skin. That's why I suddenly invited her to join us. That tea party wasn't a coincidence. Lady Claudina had deliberately brought Layla along with Matthias. I was curious to see how the Duke of Harad would react to seeing a child who grew up on his estate blossom into such a beauty. So Claudina deliberately brought the Duke along, and his reaction was just as I expected, interested yet appropriately aloof, the perfect picture of controlled composure. Claudina calmly addressed her mother. I know what you're worried about, but I don't want to dwell on such matters. Lady Brant looked extremely uneasy. That's because you're young and don't understand men. If it were me, Claudina interrupted her mother. Should every beautiful girl in the world disappear from Duke Harhad's sight? She continued, embroidering the fabric in her hands, a small smile playing on her lips. As you said, I'm young, so I don't understand men very well. But I do know that a man of prestige always has a few mistresses. Her words startled Lady Brant. Oh heavens, Claudina! Yes, so even if such a thing were to happen, it wouldn't be surprising. He's likely to crave beautiful women, just like father and other men. A man who behaves appropriately with his legal wife isn't the problem. The problem lies with those who are unrestrained, and Matthias clearly belongs to the former category. He wouldn't jeopardize his family's reputation for a fleeting desire. Besides, Claudina continued, unworried for another reason. While I wouldn't wish for it, if the Duke were to take a legal wife, I'd be more comfortable if it were that girl, as she's someone I can easily control. She wouldn't pose any threat to my position. Her daughter's words nearly made Lady Brant recoil. Oh heavens, Claudina, what are you saying? You truly, in Claudina's eyes, her mother was a fragile woman who had struggled greatly to bring her into the world. Lady Brant hadn't heard a word her daughter said. Regardless, it's not good to have a girl like that near Matthias. I come here every year. Why am I only seeing this girl now? Claudina knew her mother's unease stemmed from her inability to produce an heir, which had caused her father's affections to cool. Then, a beautiful woman had appeared, born a son, stolen her father's love, and left her mother to live with this constant anxiety. Though she pitied her mother, Claudina was also weary of that pity. Lady Brant spoke anxiously. I must speak with Duke Harhad. Claudina questioned her mother. Would it be a problem if Duke Harhad noticed a beautiful girl of low birth? I am a legal wife. Lady Brant was speechless. Claudina, you know nothing of love. She told her daughter, love can make one blind. But Claudina only smiled. Love? Because of love, I witnessed mother wash her face with tears every day. Her hands didn't stop their embroidery. So I will never be like mother. What I desire isn't the withering love that leaves one abandoned, but a perfect marriage that protects my dignity and honor. Meanwhile, at his mansion, the canary Matthias had brought back had been tamed. It no longer struggled as it had before. Instead, it perched willingly on his hand, chirping softly. Matthias stroked the canary's feathers gently. Then the Duke looked down at the garden in front of the mansion. It was Layla, with her sun-like smile and golden hair. Matthias found it hard to tear his gaze away. A while later, in front of Uncle Bill's cabin, Kyle called out, Layla, I'm here, he called again, but the house was shut and there was no response. Kyle leaned against the railing, waiting for his friend to return. It seems she's out working with Uncle Bill, but it's about time. I'll wait a little longer. Basking in the warm sunlight, Kyle thought happily. The future Mrs. Edmund is beautiful even with glasses. He remembered when he'd cycled her home. Layla had said, you bought the sandwiches earlier. Let me buy dessert this time. Kyle chuckled softly to himself. All right. Why are you always so meticulous? He'd deliberately left his bicycle behind when he'd gone to meet Layla, wanting to walk home with her. When he felt Layla's small hand lightly grasp the hem of his shirt, Kyle wanted nothing more than a shout. You can hold on tighter. Then, Layla had smiled beautifully and said, Hey Kyle, I bought you ice cream. Kyle had been overjoyed, but he'd still told himself, don't rush, take it slow. I've made up my mind, he thought, but all his resolutions melted away in Layla's presence. Once she looked at him with those large, round eyes and offered him the ice cream, Kyle's heart pounded like it would explode, and heat flushed through him. Sometimes the dreams I have make me feel more guilty than anything. What bothers me most is the fear and anxiety. Even when Layla and I are sitting together, chatting about trivial things like, the clouds are beautiful today, I'm still afraid that one day someone will appear and take Layla away. If that's the case, I'd rather confess everything, regardless of the consequences. Just then, Layla returned, calling his name. Kyle turned around joyfully, only to find a girl wearing a hat adorned with flowers waving at him. Kyle couldn't help but laugh. What's with that rustic hat? Both Uncle Bill and Layla looked displeased by his reaction, but Kyle, like a fool, still hadn't noticed their displeasure. Hi, Uncle. Wow, why is there a giant vase here? Oh dear, don't tell me you bought that yourself. Where did you get that hat? Layla bristled. I didn't buy it. Uncle Bill got it for me. Kyle's expression instantly transformed, two thumbs shooting up in a gesture of exaggerated approval. Oh, well, no wonder it looks so fantastic. Now that I take a closer look, your uncle has impeccable taste. Finally, Kyle received a playful knock on the head from Uncle Bill, and Layla ushered him to the table. Come on, let's eat. Kyle nodded tearfully, a dramatic performance. All right, I'll eat well. Inwardly, he lamented, even after all that, I still get invited to dinner. He may have put his foot in his mouth, but Layla's cooking was undeniably delicious. After the meal, Kyle sought Layla out on the porch where she'd gone to read. Are you still mad? Layla, without looking at him, replied coolly, yes. Kyle rushed to apologize. I'm sorry. If I'd known, I wouldn't have said anything. But why did he suddenly buy you a hat? Layla explained that she had asked for it. Kyle was astonished. You never asked your uncle for anything. Layla, fiddling with her glasses, spoke softly. Because when I bought myself these expensive glasses and didn't tell him, Uncle seemed really hurt. She recalled the pained expression on Uncle Bill's face as he'd said, if your eyes were bothering you, you should have told me first. How could you do that without telling me? Layla, am I that untrustworthy? She'd shaken her head repeatedly. It's not like that. It's just, I've always owed Uncle so much, so I wanted to try and buy them myself. She continued, Uncle has never been angry with me, not once my whole life. No matter how I tried to explain it then, his eyes were still so sad. After that day, things were awkward between us, so I decided to ask Uncle for something. She'd been at a loss for what to do, so she'd asked him to buy her a pretty hat. Layla stroked the brim of the hat. Uncle bought me this hat. He picked it out himself. Someone laughed at it, said it was tacky, didn't they? Kyle flushed with shame. Oh, you should have said something sooner. I'm not the kind of jerk who makes fun of gifts. Layla's voice held a hint of reproach. Someone laughed the moment they saw it. To Uncle, nothing is more beautiful than flowers. So the one with the most flowers is the most beautiful. A gruff man, like my uncle, walking into a women's clothing store to buy me this hat. I know how special that is. I know how much it means. Layla clutched the hat to her chest. To me, this is the most beautiful, most precious hat in the world. So don't make fun of it anymore, okay? Kyle quickly responded, I understand. I understand. A moment later, the door to the house swung open, and Uncle Bill emerged, coat and hat on. He looked at Kyle and asked, why hasn't this boy gone home yet? Kyle looked at him beseechingly. Layla's man has to accept second place, because the first place in Layla's heart will always belong to Uncle Bill. Before leaving, Uncle Bill addressed Layla. I have to go into town. She smiled and replied dutifully, okay, Uncle, come home soon. Watching the two of them, Kyle felt a pang of happiness for them. It was only natural. Jealousy was pointless. Afterward, only Kyle and Layla remained, engrossed in their reading. Kyle dejectedly hid his face behind his book, his thoughts drifting. She hasn't looked at me once. I borrowed this book for nothing. Meanwhile, Layla was happily lost in her own book, munching on cookies. Who's the murderer? Next page. Kyle peeked over the top of his book. Does Layla even know how beautiful she looks when she's concentrating like that? The way she nibbles on those cookies is adorable too. Kyle decided to sit up and talk to her. Hey Layla, is there ever a time? Just then, Layla heard someone approaching. Kyle looked in the same direction. The sound of hooves grew steadily closer. Both Layla and Kyle rose to greet the newcomer, for it was none other than Duke Matthias. As etiquette dictated, they descended the porch steps to meet him. Kyle bowed. Greetings, Your Grace. Layla, however, was distracted, nervously brushing cookie crumbs from her clothes, her mind in turmoil. Why is he here now? Kyle nudged her hand gently and whispered, Stop that. You've already gotten them all. The Duke witnessed their intimate exchange. Where's Liam? He inquired. Layla replied, He just went downtown for a bit. Do you need anything? The Duke asked, his gaze settling on Layla. Are you in charge of picking the roses, Miss Rulon? Layla nodded. You mean the roses in the garden, right? Taking this as confirmation, the Duke instructed her, as he turned to leave, bring a suitable amount of roses to my mansion. Layla quickly prepared to go. Kyle stared at her. You've even put on your new hat, he observed, then offered, I'll help you with the chores. Let's go together. But Layla refused. It's all right, she said. There's not much to do. Kyle persisted. Then I'll wait for you at home. Layla, holding a small basket, told Kyle to go home. If Mrs. Edmond finds out you're playing here again, she'll be angry. Don't get scolded because of me. Go home and study. This time, he couldn't say anything more. Watching Layla depart, Kyle thought to himself, strange. Why would he come here directly to arrange such a small matter as delivering roses? No, it must have just been a stop along the way. It's not strange at all. But why do I suddenly feel uneasy? He pondered for a moment, then reassured himself, no, why would it be Duke Matthias? Why should I worry about a nobleman who's about to get married? He watched Layla wave goodbye, a ripple of emotion stirring within him. It seems I've been too sensitive lately. Why do I keep feeling uneasy? Kyle murmured Layla's name. Meanwhile, at Matthias's mansion, Layla placed a basket filled with roses on the table. Your Grace, she announced, I've brought the roses as you requested. However, Matthias responded coldly, bring different ones. Layla thought she had misheard. I'm sorry, Matthias, without even looking up, said, don't choose vibrant colors. Bring different ones. Don't choose showy colors. Bring different ones. Did the fastidious Matthias dislike the flowers the young woman had just brought? Or was this merely a pretext to prolong Layla's time with him? Layla lowered her head and accepted the request. Yes, I understand, Your Grace. Stepping outside, the bright sunlight combined with the frustration in her heart made Layla seethe. She neatly tied back her hair. Don't choose showy colors, he says. And yet, he said to bring a suitable amount. Just as her anger reached its peak, something on the ground presented itself as an outlet for her frustration. Layla kicked a stone, sending it flying. Why not just tell me the colors you wanted in the first place? Layla looked back at the magnificent villa. Although she didn't understand the layout of the mansion, she knew this riverside villa was the Duke's private space, rarely visited by guests or strangers. In such a private space, why such a demand for flowers? It's probably for his fiancée, Miss Claudina. Having guessed his intentions, Layla had chosen vibrant roses to suit Miss Brandt's taste, and this was the result. The accurate conclusion was that everyone's assessment of the Duke was wrong, completely wrong. A man who makes others suffer in the scorching summer heat. How could he be a good person? I don't know what others think, but I really hate the Duke. Despite her intense dislike, Layla's hands picked the flowers with surprising dexterity. How would the story between these two unfold? After selecting flowers that met Matthias's requirements, Layla wrestled with how to face the Duke. I'll just look straight ahead and go in. Just then, the two men who had been talking with Matthias in the room earlier came out. Seeing the young girl, the older man said, Layla, you've worked hard. The girl responded politely, hello, sir. "Where you all going?" He replied, "We're heading back to the mansion. Keep up the good work." It was a private villa, and now the other two had left as well, meaning only the Duke and Layla remained in the villa. Her heart, for some inexplicable reason, beat faster. Although there were no romantic feelings involved, being alone with a man did make things feel somewhat ambiguous. When Layla entered Matthias's room, she found him asleep with his eyes closed. Bathed in the sunlight streaming through the window, his handsome features were thrown into sharp relief. Layla observed him slowly. Was he sleeping? He looked exhausted. I wonder if it's because I'm so used to seeing him so composed. He now seems like a stranger. So what should I do now? Wait here, or just leave the flowers and go? Just then, as if reading Layla's mind, Matthias opened his eyes and looked at her. Layla quickly lowered her head and announced, "Your Grace, I brought the new roses. The new flowers. May I leave now?" Layla asked softly. Instead of answering, Matthias countered, "Would you leave if you could?" Layla quickly responded, "Although I made a mistake before, this time I brought the correct color you desired." As soon as the words left her mouth, a chill ran down Layla's spine. "I'm so annoyed I just spoke my mind." However, Matthias wasn't angry at all. Looking at the documents in his hand, he said, "Well then, sit down." Layla breathed a sigh of relief. He wasn't angry. It seemed she had finally chosen the color he wanted. However, she didn't want to linger. "There's no need. If your Grace is satisfied, I'll take my leave." Matthias didn't seem inclined to let her go so easily. He found another reason for her to stay. "Miss Rivlin, if you've brought the flowers, isn't it also your task to arrange them?" Layla stammered, "But my flower arranging skills aren't good." Matthias maintained his gentle demeanor. "Well then, what was she supposed to do now?" A simple question, yet cornered Layla. She sighed wearily. "Now, it's just the Duke and I in this mansion. Even if I'm not skilled, it's still part of my job." Layla sat down and began picking up each flower stem she had gathered, placing them in the vase. Although Matthias's hand moved across the paper, his eyes were fixed on Layla. Watching her suddenly reminded him of the canary in his bedroom. At first, it trembled in his hands. When he moved it to the bedroom, it fell silent, as if dead. After a while, it gradually let down its guard and began to follow him, no matter how untamed it had been. Now it could perch on his hand, nuzzling against him, their eyes meeting, and it sang a beautiful song, as if chirping a love story. So what about Layla Rivlin? When Layla looked up, she found Matthias staring at her. Embarrassment spurred Layla to quick action. She grabbed the vase on the table. "Oh dear, there's no water in the vase." Then, clutching the vase, she rushed out. A while later, the vase of roses was arranged. Layla felt like she had just escaped a disaster. "I've arranged them, Your Grace. Do you like them?" Matthias recalled Layla's earlier words. "I don't know how to arrange flowers." Her words had been honest, but he still commented, "It looks awful." Layla could only apologize. "Then I'll ask someone more skilled in flower arranging to come here." At that moment, Matthias told Layla to sit down. Layla froze for 5 seconds. "Yes? Is there something else?" Matthias repeated, "Sit down, Layla." He placed a covered dish in front of her. "Eat." Layla lifted the lid of the dish expectantly. On the plate were 2 sandwiches and a glass of cold water. Seeing Layla's bewildered expression, Matthias was also puzzled. Why does she look so flustered? Is it because the work was too hard and tiring? She likes that. She would eat with gusto, smiling brightly like the sun. "If you like things like that, I suppose I've compensated you appropriately. The result was quite poor, but you've done the gardener's work." So, from the beginning, Matthias had noticed Layla's every move and even prepared a meal as compensation. "My cold-hearted CEO," Layla replied coolly, "Thank you, Your Grace. I'm Fine." Matthias took a sip of water, pondering the thoughts of the girl across from him. "If you have no further requests, I'll take my leave." Matthias placed his glass on the table. "Is that what you mean?" Matthias thought, then began to speak. "Layla, well, my word to request." In the previous chapter, Layla had said to Matthias, "If you have no further requests." "If that's what you mean, then I'll excuse myself." "Layla, that was a request, not a favor." Layla clenched her fists, tried to remain composed. "I know it could never be a favor. Regardless, my feelings don't matter, so refusing is also pointless." Layla then sat down quietly, further refusal likely to make things worse. Best to eat quickly and leave. She reached for a sandwich. Layla suddenly remembered she had already eaten lunch and a snack earlier. Whether it was from running back and forth between the garden and the villa, or the hot weather, she couldn't swallow anything. Holding the sandwich in her hand, she felt uneasy. Was this really just payment for a chore, or a punishment for my terrible flower arranging skills? It was probably the latter. With a mouthful of sandwich, Layla caught Matthias's gaze. She felt bewildered. Why does he keep staring at me? Layla lowered her head, avoiding the Duke's eyes. Matthias continued to watch her calmly. Still the same as when she was a child. When she saw something she shouldn't have, she would just lower her head, pretend to be busy, and run away to an irritating degree. After a moment of thought, Matthias placed his glass on the table. Suddenly, Matthias reached out and grabbed the ribbon on Layla's hat. He said, "Layla, as a lady, you should take off your hat indoors." Layla froze, stunned by his action. By now, Matthias had removed Layla's flower-adorned hat. He moved closer to Layla, acting as if this were the most natural thing in the world. Layla felt incredibly dizzy after this action. She imagined herself kneeling at Matthias's feet, then scoffed at the thought. "I've been trying to endure. Even in difficult situations, I still smiled calmly. No matter what orders are given to me, it doesn't matter. But my uncle's gift cannot become a laughingstock for others." Having reached this realization, she stood up and declared firmly, "I'm going home now, so please return my hat, Your Grace." Matthias responded calmly, unhurried, "Then eat. Once you've finished eating, I'll return your hat and let you go home." Simple enough. Refusing to be humiliated further, Layla firmly refused. "No, I don't want it. I don't want to eat. I can't eat right now. So please return my hat." Matthias stood up and walked towards her. "You don't want it?" Layla quickly changed her tone, becoming conciliatory. "I was wrong. Please give me back my hat." Matthias held the hat high above her reach. Seeing this, Layla cried out, "Your Grace." Then she pleaded with him, "Give me back my hat." Matthias's gaze remained the same, focused on Layla. The sandwich on the table fell to the floor. Matthias's eyes were so beautiful that emerald green was mesmerizing, but his actions were not beautiful at all. Matthias suddenly threw her flower-adorned hat out the door. Seeing this, Layla rushed out the door in a panic. She reached out, trying to grasp at any shred of hope, but it was too late. Layla could only stand there and watch. Her precious hat fell into the river below. Layla immediately ran downstairs to the courtyard, wanting to retrieve her hat. Carried by the current, the hat had already drifted quite far. Layla was at a loss. What should she do? She couldn't reach it. She had to act quickly before it drifted even further away. At this moment, Layla suddenly recalled her past. Her cousins bullied her. They gave her a memorable debut. They threw her into the lake. Layla couldn't swim, so she panicked, struggling, trying to shout as loud as she could, hoping someone would hear, but those brilliant cousins didn't care at all. "Let's see what you can do. Try your best." Back in the present, the image of drowning came back to haunt Layla again, her feet frozen in place. It was so terrifying. Suddenly, Layla remembered the image of Uncle Bill excitedly bringing the hat he had personally picked out for her. Why are there so many kinds of hats in this world? "I bought this in Lynn. If you don't like it, take it back and exchange it." Layla had been so thrilled. "Uncle, you picked it out for me yourself. It's so beautiful." "Uncle, I'll definitely use it well. I can't let it go to waste." Her uncle then asked. Layla, without hesitation, put on the hat, her face beaming with happiness. "Uncle, what do you think? Does it suit me?" Uncle Bill smiled kindly, looking at her as if she were his own daughter. "Yes, it's beautiful." Because it was a gift from Uncle Bill, Layla couldn't afford to be afraid. She began to take off her glasses, carefully placing them on a towel. Matthias still stood on the balcony, looking down impassively. The sight of Layla wading into the river gave him pause. Could it be that she was going into the river to retrieve the hat? At this moment, Layla's entire body was submerged in the water. She was slowly approaching the hat. Matthias continued to watch her every move intently. The section of the river near the villa wasn't deep, but further out, the water was deeper than his eyes. Layla was now very close to the hat. She reached out, grasped the hat's ribbon, and held it tight. She had it, but Layla didn't realize how far she had gone. The water here was deep. The sensation of floating without any support immediately sent Layla into a panic. She couldn't swim, and she began to struggle. But the more she struggled, the more the water swallowed her. Seeing the situation take a turn for the worse, Matthias turned and hurried down the stairs. The sandwich still lay on the floor. "Eat. Get the hat back. Go home." Why did such a simple thing have to become so complicated? Layla used all her strength to try to surface. But how could someone who couldn't swim manage it? Matthias had now run to the riverbank. Layla gave up, sinking into the river, but still clutching the hat tightly. Matthias picked up his pace and jumped straight into the river to save Layla. His arms wrapped tightly around her small frame, pushing Layla upwards. Slowly, the two of them surfaced. The sunlight was still as bright as before. Matthias had now brought Layla to the shore. Layla was limp, like a lifeless body, but still clutched the hat tightly to her chest. Layla slowly sat up. Seeing her awake, Matthias breathed a sigh of relief. Seeing that she was all right, he exhaled deeply. Matthias, too, was drenched. But what caught his attention was that even after falling into the river and nearly drowning, Layla still clung tightly to the hat. What was it about that hat? Matthias turned his face, a wry smile playing on his lips. Whether directed at Layla or himself, it was hard to tell. Seeing him smile like that, Layla turned her head to look at him. Her face was filled with resentment and anger. Why? How could you? Layla clenched her fists. She stood up to face Matthias. After all of that, how could he still be smiling? Whose fault was it that things had turned out this way? The hat was completely soaked, and then Layla shook the hat to get rid of the excess water, some of it splashing onto Matthias. Though slightly concerned, she didn't care. Layla pursed her lips in displeasure. Whatever. Even if I hadn't splashed him, he's already soaked. Layla, spurred on by the situation, used the hem of her skirt to fling water everywhere. Matthias simply sat still, watching Layla wring out her clothes. He wiped the water from his face and uttered a typical CEO line. Interesting. I didn't expect things to get this interesting. Hearing this, Layla thought, what's so interesting about this? Then she asked him, why did you do that to me? Matthias began to speak. Layla, first, shouldn't you be thanking the person who saved you? Hearing his audacious words, Layla was stunned. What are you talking about? Layla answered fearlessly, I think none of this would have happened if you hadn't thrown my hat into the river. Matthias, hearing this, stood up and retorted, no, none of this would have happened if you had just eaten the sandwich and gone home. A flicker of guilt touched Layla at his words. Color rose in her cheeks as she lowered her head. Matthias pressed his advantage, flicking water from his hand onto her. If you can't swim, don't jump in blindly. Layla bit her lip, trying to suppress the rising tide of injustice and anger. Patience, she told herself. After all, the Duke is Avis's master. My actions will make Uncle Bill uncomfortable. Everything is for Uncle Bill. For Uncle Bill. Then, with a bow, she said, thank you for saving me. Duke Matthias, buttoning his shirt, demanded she say it again. Like a lady, Layla's fury surged, but she forced herself to repeat the mantra for Uncle Bill. I apologize, Your Grace, she replied, but I am not a lady. Not like a noble woman. Matthias responded, even so, you must act like one in front of me. Regardless of who you are, I am still a gentleman. Matthias stared at Layla, seemingly waiting for something. His logic left Layla speechless. She replaced her hat, and with a small curtsy, said, thank you for saving my life, Your Grace. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'll be going. Goodbye. Without waiting for permission, she hurried past Matthias, her steps firm. I will not break down today. I will not be that man's laughingstock again. Absolutely no crying. I cannot cry for someone like that. Please. Layla fought back the tears that threatened to spill down her face. Out of sight of those river blue eyes, Layla ran towards home. Just as she had run the day, she'd picked up the gold coin. Now, the shadow of her hat couldn't hide her reddened eyes. I hate this. Layla ran faster. She had seen him strolling along the forest path with Miss Claudina before. The gentleman escorting the beautiful lady, a scene straight out of an old courtly fairy tale. Layla had unconsciously followed their figures with her eyes. At the end of the path, the wind had unkindly snatched the lady's hat away. He had walked slowly to the edge of the path, retrieved the hat, and returned it to Miss Claudina. An elegant and proper gesture. Yet today, he had offended Layla with the same beautiful grace, his expression calm, as if nothing had happened. Bright sunlight filtered through the trees. Layla, unable to contain her emotions any longer, hid her face against a tree trunk, weeping at her humiliation. Her eyes were red-rimmed, while Matthias had maintained that placid expression in front of her, as if nothing at all had occurred. It couldn't be undone. He had been cruel. Layla washed her tear-stained face with river water, resting against a nearby tree. The day had unfolded in such a painful way. After a while, Layla continued on her way, no longer feeling humiliated, but furious. Seriously? My savior? Act like a lady. Layla took her anger out on a small stone in the path. Resentment for the Duke welled up inside her, so she kicked a pebble by the roadside with all her might, watching the innocent little stone fly. Layla frowned. Through her blurry vision, she realized she had made a grave mistake. Layla froze. Oh, my glasses. The distance home suddenly felt much further. Back there, at Matthias's villa, clear music echoed in the large room. Matthias sat in a corner, carefully examining Layla's glasses. Looking at the spectacles reminded him of the little girl who always frowned at him. Her usually tired, ordinary eyes held a particular glint that had caught his attention. Matthias picked up a cigarette, placing it between his lips and lighting it. Matthias walked slowly out onto the balcony, Layla's glasses in his hand. He tossed them playfully in the air. Matthias held the spectacles in his palm, suddenly recalling his first encounter with Layla, the child who had said she would be staying in Avis for a while. He tossed the glasses in the air again. But that child, unknowingly, had blossomed into a woman within Matthias Heard's domain. He pictured her standing there the day before, the girl with the shimmering, magically green eyes that had looked up at him. A fresh, sweet fragrance. Layla was like a rose in full summer bloom, Matthias thought. Matthias idly turned Layla's spectacles in his hand, mulling over these thoughts. The flood of memories caused Matthias to exhale a plume of smoke. He murmured Layla's name, a whisper like a summer heat wave, repeating it over and over, the name of friction against his tongue, a provocation. After a few more playful tosses, Matthias placed the spectacles in a drawer, the thought of those green eyes behind the lenses. Vanishing with them, Matthias took a long bath, quickly dressed, and composed himself. Outside, dusk had settled. It was time for Matthias to leave the villa for the party, resuming his usual impeccable image as Duke Heard. He strolled towards the waiting car, and as soon as Matthias stepped inside, the car started. It was a tranquil midsummer evening dinner at Uncle Bill's house. Perhaps a crow took them, Uncle Bill said to Layla. Those birds are always attracted to shiny things. Remember your hairpin? Layla chuckled softly. Of course, how could I forget? It was a gift from Uncle Bill for Layla's 13th birthday, stolen within days of receiving it. The mere memory caused Layla's heart to ache. Uncle Bill also remembered how, from that day on, she had searched every crow's nest in the forest, but never found it. Layla pouted. If this happens again, no matter how much I like birds, I'll hate crows. Uncle Bill consoled her. Don't worry too much. You can buy new glasses if you need to. If you can't find them, you must tell me, Layla. Don't keep it to yourself. She nodded in agreement. In truth, Layla dared not tell Uncle Bill about the Duke throwing her hat into the river, so she couldn't mention leaving her glasses at the dock. That would only worry him more. Layla figured her glasses must still be there. She planned to retrieve them quietly the next morning. Early the next day, Layla went to the villa, but despite searching everywhere, she couldn't find her glasses. She clearly remembered placing them on her handkerchief. Suddenly, she noticed her poor handkerchief lying forlornly in the corner. The missing handkerchief meant the glasses placed on it had been moved. Could have been the Duke? Layla couldn't believe it. She reasoned that the Duke had no reason to take them. Just then, a crow perched on a branch above Layla, and she suspected it was the culprit. She yelled, "Where did you put them? Where are they? Was it really you?" Layla didn't know how to find her glasses. The suspect could only be one of two, the crow or the Duke. A pigeon flew to Kyle's window, and Kyle looked out from his room to greet it. It was Layla's messenger, a 2-year veteran pigeon named Phoebe. Phoebe's defining characteristics were her fearlessness and her large appetite. After receiving the letter, Kyle thanked Phoebe, but Phoebe wasn't satisfied with mere words. Understanding, Kyle fetched some food for Phoebe as a reward. Holding the letter, Kyle felt puzzled. We have an appointment at the library later. Why is Layla sending a letter now? Is she going to be late? The letter read, Kyle, I lost my glasses. I have to go look for them today, so I can't keep my promise to go to the library with you. I'm so sorry. Kyle shot to his feet in surprise. Glasses? The glasses Layla worked so hard to buy. How could she lose them? Without a second thought, he quickly grabbed his coat and left. Kyle's mother said in confusion, It's almost time for class. Where are you going? Kyle lied. I'm going to the library to study, and then I'll be back, Mom. But his mother guessed correctly. You're going to Layla's again, aren't you? Kyle didn't say anything more and walked out the door. Layla will come back with me. I'll be back soon. Exasperated with her son, Kyle's mother felt helpless. He's always hovering around Layla. Important times are coming soon. How long does he plan to play around with that girl? Kyle quickly arrived at Layla's house. Hearing a familiar voice, Layla looked over curiously. He immediately asked, "How did you lose your glasses? Did you find them?" "Not yet," Layla said. Kyle offered, "I'll buy you a new pair. Let's go downtown now." Layla was silent for a moment, then asked Kyle, "Why?" Kyle suddenly remembered that he was so eager he'd forgotten what kind of person Layla was. She thanked him but said, "It's okay. I don't need them, and I plan to keep looking." Kyle had known since childhood the meaning of that look in Layla's eyes. No matter what anyone said, she wouldn't back down. It was the stubborn look of Layla Revelin, determined to finish whatever she set out to do. The next day, Layla started rummaging through a crow's nest. Kyle held the ladder below and asked, "Any luck?" Layla replied, "Not this time either." A crow flew fiercely towards Layla's head, and Kyle quickly warned her to be careful. In an instant, a flock of crows attacked Layla, and she had to give up and climb down. Having found nothing there, the two went to the next location together, truly resolute. Suddenly, Layla asked Kyle, "Shouldn't you be going home now? Thank you for coming with me, but I can go by myself now." Of course, Kyle wanted to search with her, because even if he tried to stop her, Layla wouldn't listen, so he could only follow her. And it was quite amusing to see crow feathers stuck in Layla's hair. In the distance, the Duke's car was approaching. The butler, seeing them, asked curiously, "What are those children doing?" The chauffeur chuckled, "I heard about it too. They say a crow took Layla's glasses, so they must be searching for that crow in places like this." All sorts of stories were spreading. Matthias thought to himself, "A crow? She can't possibly not know she left her glasses at the dock." The fact that she was searching crows' nests made Matthias wonder if she genuinely didn't know, or if Layla simply didn't want to know. Seeing Layla's figure passing by outside, at that very moment, she also happened to make eye contact with Matthias. Seeing the person in the car, Layla was also slightly surprised. The two passed each other just like that. Layla's disheveled appearance made Matthias chuckle inwardly. Inwardly, Layla was puzzled. Why did the Duke look at me like that? She felt her luck was bad, but quickly thought she should try harder. Kyle, standing beside her, asked, "What now, Layla?" She said, "Come on, let's go to the next crow's nest." Whether it was the crows or the Duke, Layla had narrowed down the suspects to two. Since then, Layla wandered the forest for several more days, Kyle happily accompanying her, but all efforts were in vain, and Matthias pretended not to care. After all, she seemed to be happily searching all the bird nests. As time passed, their foolish behavior became tedious. In the following days, Matthias put aside his busy schedule and headed to his private villa. Marquis Lindemann will be arriving tomorrow afternoon, the butler informed Matthias. He asked, "And Ritter?" The butler replied, "He arrived earlier than expected." Matthias acknowledged this. The butler continued, "The old madam has instructed us to prepare lunch for tomorrow. She also hopes, if you're not busy, that you could join them," he reported to Matthias. Suddenly, Matthias saw Layla lurking outside the villa. He smiled at the butler and said, "All right, that's all. Then I'll have the car ready for you tomorrow afternoon," he replied. "Have a pleasant time." Having finished their business, the butler and the servants left, and the car gradually disappeared from the villa. Layla stood outside, her gaze fixed on the villa, hesitation holding her back from entering. Yet, the need to recover her glasses propelled her forward. Stepping inside to face Matthias, she began, "I apologize for intruding upon you like this." Duke Matthias observed her, noting the stark contrast to the girl who had once brandished her hat and skirts before him. After a moment, he prompted, "Well then, what is it?" "Excuse me, there's something I wanted to ask," she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. Just then, the sharp ring of the telephone sliced through the air. Matthias rose smoothly to his feet, leaving Layla standing there, unable to meet his gaze. He brushed past her to answer the call. She couldn't understand the specifics, but the conversation seemed to revolve around a complex contract. Layla's thoughts churned, realizing he was still working, even within the confines of his villa. Given the vast reach of the He-Herd family's business, his constant activity made sense. How could the Duke always appear so composed and at ease? Even his smile held a quiet stillness, his posture impeccable, as if ingrained within his very being. Even over the phone, discussing business, the overwhelming presence of the family's leader was palpable. No wonder everyone praised the impeccable Matthias He-Herd. Yes, Layla thought, the very same Matthias He-Herd who was perpetually lauded by all. Could he be the one who took my glasses? No. How pathetic of me to even entertain such a question. The thought pricked at her, a wave of self-reproach washing over her for harboring such baseless suspicions. Returning to search the remaining crows' nests would likely be more productive. Layla resolved to do just that. Matthias, still engrossed in his call, glanced in her direction. "I'll take my leave then, Your Grace," Layla murmured softly. Matthias covered the mouthpiece of the phone with one hand. "Wait," he commanded. Confusion flickered across Layla's face, yet she dared not disobey Matthias's order, remaining rooted to the spot. She truly couldn't fathom what he intended. By then, Matthias had concluded his call. He addressed Layla directly. "Speak. What did you want to say?" Layla clasped her hands together, her voice barely a whisper. "When I fell into the water the other day, I left my glasses on the dock. I was wondering if you happened to see them." "Let me think. I don't believe so," Matthias replied, his words laced with a hint of amusement. "But it does seem as though I've hidden them." Layla's eyes widened in surprise. "My glasses? You really hid them?" Layla blurted out, her voice laced with urgency. Matthias stepped closer, a glint in his eyes. "What do you think? Was he toying with her again?" Layla wondered, then responded, "I don't believe you would do such a thing." She hesitated, a wave of sadness washing over her. "That's unfortunate, Your Grace," Layla said mournfully. Night had fallen, casting its shadows over the palace, where a banquet was underway. Within the master suite, a royal servant brought in a tray laden with food. Ritter, raising a glass, remarked, "I never imagined such a private space could accommodate everyone." "The Duke is so generous to his fiancée's requests," Claudina said shyly. "Ritter, you're drunk. The engagement ceremony hasn't even taken place yet. It's embarrassing to have everyone address me that way." Others chimed in, "What's the harm? It's the truth. It's just us here. What's there to worry about? Everyone here knows Claudina will be the next Duchess." Ritter simply chuckled, offering no further comment. Claudina, eager to bring the party to a swift close, suggested, "It seems everyone has had a bit too much to drink. Shall we rise?" A man interjected, "I've only just sat down. There's no need to rush." "If you're uncomfortable, I apologize," Madam Heard. Suddenly, Ritter's attention was caught by something unexpected. "What's that? A birdcage? How surprising. Matthias, have you taken up a peculiar new hobby?" The bird within the cage suddenly took flight, landing gracefully on Matthias's outstretched hand. Gasps of astonishment rippled through the room. Matthias was keeping a bird. Ritter's expression was one of disbelief. "Not just anyone, but you yourself are keeping it? What is this? Are you raising it for hunting?" "Poor thing. It seems the bird doesn't know what kind of man our Duke truly is. This bird entrusts its life to a master falconer. Should we call it foolish or pitiful? Claudina, what do you think?" Claudina murmured, Let me see. Could we call it a foolish and pitiful bird? It seems to be the same bird you brought back from the greenhouse last time. Have you given it a name? If not, I'd like to give it one." But Matthias was disinclined. "It's not worth it, Mississippi. It's just a bird." Everyone laughed, especially Ritter. Truly a foolish and pitiful bird, falling for a hunter who won't even grant a name. Claudina's gaze drifted to the side, watching the bird perched on Matthias's hand. Layla was trying to sleep, tossing and turning restlessly in her bed. Then she remembered the moment she spoke with Matthias. "I never thought you would do such a thing, because it's awful, Duke." Layla had summoned all her courage to ask him. However, the butler came to call Matthias away. He had received an urgent telegram and left immediately. "There's something you need to confirm right now." A curt nod, as if telling Layla to leave. She had to return, unable to inquire further about her glasses. But even so, she was now certain it wasn't the crows who had taken them, but the Duke. Why would he take my glasses? Does he like shiny things like crows too? What should I do now? How long am I going to keep coming back to ask for them? It doesn't seem like he intends to return them easily, but I can't wait forever. Is there a better way? I suppose. The glasses are most likely stored somewhere in the villa, as there's no need to bring something found at the docks to the main mansion. Tonight, the Heard family is gathered for a banquet, everyone, including the Duke, enjoying themselves late into the night. In the dead of night, surely no one would visit such a secluded villa. Reasoning like a detective in a mystery novel, Layla hatched a slightly larcenous plan. If I quickly go to the villa and secretly search for the glasses, the moon is bright, making travel easier. Come on, let's get the back. No, at least let's go check. It should be fine. After all, they're my glasses. At the Heard family's party venue, Matthias gazed at the flowers on the balcony, murmuring to himself, Layla reveling. "It's time to check my trap." Layla must have realized the implication of my words, but her green eyes stared intently at me, as if saying, She rummaged through crow nests in the forest for days just to find her glasses. She certainly won't give up easily this time. She's bound to fall into the trap. Matthias, having already returned to the mansion, observed the glasses in his hand. What is this bait for? Though there's no answer, I don't care. The window suddenly flew open with a bang. Matthias was startled. Layla was climbing in through the window, sticking her leg in first. Then, slowly, stealthily, she entered the house. Regardless, Matthias would catch her first and think about the rest later. The window abruptly swung open, Layla's foot stepping swiftly inside. Each movement was incredibly soft, her deep blue eyes scanning the surroundings. Matthias, picking up on the earlier sound, thought, I purposely left the window unlocked to make it easier to hear. Did she come in through the window? Though this is beyond my expectations, she always manages to surprise me. Layla didn't dare turn on the lights. The room was too dark. She couldn't see a thing. Matthias peered, wondering what she planned to do after her bold entry into the mansion. Ah, so she's searching the drawers. Too bad there's nothing of particular interest there. Layla tried searching, but found nothing. Nowhere else either. Layla didn't know where else they could be hidden. This was Matthias's bait, set for his own purposes so he could get the girl. No, she wasn't a girl anymore. She's Layla Revelin. I think I can easily recognize now why I waited in this pathetic trap. Layla was still diligently searching when Matthias's voice suddenly sounded from behind her. Looking for this, Layla was utterly startled. Why was the Duke here? There was a banquet at the mansion today. Oh no, what should I do now? How do I explain this situation? I apologize. I didn't know the Duke was here. I am terribly sorry. Matthias spoke in a deep voice. If I weren't here, would you have just barged in like a thief? Layla's gaze shifted to Matthias's hand. Those are my glasses. I was just trying to retrieve my belongings. It was the Duke who had hidden the glasses. Despite the boldness of her actions, a timidity lurked within her. She was already trembling. Matthias's footsteps turned towards a distance. Layla didn't know what the Duke was going to do. Where's he going? Is he going to throw the glasses into the river, just like the hat? No. If he does that, I'll never find them. No, please stop, Duke. Please stop. Those are my glasses. The shawl draped around Layla suddenly slipped, leaving her in only a thin nightgown. Matthias looked down at her. Layla blushed, covering herself. She knelt down, picked up the shawl, and slowly draped it around herself again. A hint of amusement laced Matthias's voice. Layla, you've already seen my body, and now you come here wearing only a nightgown. How interesting. Layla was mortified. This was an unavoidable situation, not intentional. I had no choice. Looking at Matthias's expression, Layla didn't know where to hide. Just endure it. The current situation is extremely disadvantageous for me. The Duke could arrest me for trespassing at any moment or simply throw the glasses into the river. It would be too easy for him to put me in a compromising position. I didn't mean to. I apologized to the Duke. Layla's demeanor made Matthias chuckle. Why are you suddenly acting like a lady? You said you weren't one. Layla said anxiously. Regardless, the Duke is a gentleman. The corners of Matthias's mouth curved upwards. Laughter echoed outwards. Who knows, Layla? I might not be a gentleman after all. Seeing a sliver of opportunity, Layla pressed on. No, the Duke is a gentleman. The finest gentleman. Inwardly, she cringed. Matthias stepped closer to her. Is that so? That's a generous assessment. Layla laughed nervously. How dare I presume to judge the Duke? That would be absurd. Doesn't everyone think so? Yes, I don't think so. There's no such thing. So, Your Grace, please return my glasses. They were difficult to make and are very important to me. I deeply apologize for trespassing onto the estate. To look for them, Matthias approached her. Layla, look up. The glasses were suddenly placed on her face. Layla hadn't expected Matthias to put the glasses on her himself. He even brushed her hair. The look Matthias gave Layla seemed profound. His hand involuntarily touched her cheek. Matthias's expression seemed to want to say something. The moonlight tonight was exceptionally clear and bright. The night was unusually beautiful. Now, Matthias understood what that feeling was. This girl, the Layla I yearned for, this beautifully grown woman. I also know the outcome of this feeling. Ambition only exists for a fleeting moment, then vanishes. Am I willing to leave a stain on my life for the sake of satisfying that feeling? Is Layla worth it? No. If so, then why not? The hand that touched Layla's lips slowly withdrew. The answer to that question was all too clear. You should leave now. Layla's figure on the late-night path, gradually leaving the estate. How did I leave? Saying goodbye and returning along the tree-lined path. All memories are blurred. What I remember most clearly are those deep, blue eyes, like a river that swallows people whole. That burning hand, that touch, like fingers entering and leaving a mouth. That pool that stole my breath. Then came the pain and shame. I don't understand why he treated me that way. The oil lamp in the quiet night looked so forlorn. Layla's eyes, filled with complex emotions, reflected its melancholic glow. I don't want to see him again. Never again. And Matthias, too, couldn't forget that moment. It had been days since he'd seen Layla Revelin, the girl who often helped build the gazebo in the garden. Since that night, she retrieved her glasses. Since holding her in my arms, I've thought a great deal about my feelings for her. After reaching a meaningless and tedious conclusion, I let her go. I believed I could control those feelings. But it was precisely because I let her go that way that she's now so distant. Perhaps it's for the best. Matthias pendait Layla's absence. Suddenly, someone entered and addressed Matthias. Master, we have finished the preparations for the hunt. Elsewhere, Ritter, seeing Layla with a basket, asked, "Are you going to do the laundry? Let's go together." Layla replied cheerfully, "Thank you." While hanging the clothes, Layla thought, 10 days. That's how long I've been avoiding him. Ritter turned to Layla. "After we finish this, let's go for a walk by that tree you like by the river, okay?" Because Layla wanted to avoid being near the river, she tried to politely decline the walk. "Maybe next time. I have a lot of work to do at home." Ritter asked, surprised, "Why?" "It's strange. Why have you been staying home so much lately? I thought you'd go out more after finding your glasses, but I don't understand why the opposite is true." Layla smiled faintly. "Is that so?" She hadn't even set foot in the forest. Seeing that Layla wasn't wearing her glasses, Ritter asked, puzzled, "But you found your glasses. Why aren't you wearing them?" Layla immediately said, "Because I'm afraid of losing them again. I only use them when I'm reading, even when I go out to the garden to help my uncle." Upon returning, Layla quickly left, as if fleeing to avoid the Duke. This was how Layla had to live, until the end of summer. Suddenly, a sound came from the distance. A group of people on horseback arrived, rifles slung over their shoulders. Ritter spoke, "Looks like a hunting party. How exciting." Layla froze for a few seconds. As Matthias turned to look at her, his eyes fixed on Layla. Layla, frightened, hid behind the clothes hanging on a line. She quickly pulled the laundry closer, concealing herself further. Summer is almost over, and autumn is coming. After his engagement to Lady Claudina, he will leave here for the capital. So if I just endure one more season. Matthias walked for a while, then stopped, observing carefully once more. Layla remained motionless, hidden behind the clothes. Ritter looked at Layla. "Aren't you happy? Do you want to come to my house?" "It's okay, Ritter. It'll be over tonight anyway." Layla bent down to pick up the basket. "Let's go inside." Seeing this, Ritter ran over to help. "Give it to me. I'll carry it." "Are you really all right?" Layla replied, "Yes, Ritter. It's okay." When he leaves, the Avis forest will return to its peaceful state. These chaotic days. Then Layla looked towards the forest. "I have to go to the forest tonight anyway. There will be many poor birds that need burying." In the forest, Matthias addressed the others. "I'm going to look around a bit more. You can take the guests back first." They replied in unison, "Yes, we understand, Your Grace." Dusk began to settle. Suddenly, Matthias stopped his horse, his gaze drawn to a bird perched on a branch. Matthias aimed his rifle at the bird, his eyes focused on the target. The moment he had his sights set, the bullet struck the bird. Despite losing a lot of blood, the bird still tried to fly away. Matthias found it amusing. "Like I said, today was a satisfying hunt. But even so, I still feel as if something is missing. Perhaps because that bird struggled so desperately to escape, it seems I've hunted a greater variety today." Layla stepped into the forest, shovel in hand, another dead bird every few paces. Layla cursed inwardly. How hateful. She dug hole after hole, burying the unfortunate birds. I detest the Duke's unpleasant hobby, but something is strange. Layla examined the graves carefully. I bury birds every year, but I've never made grave space so evenly like this. No wonder I felt uneasy. It's best to bury the last one and return. Layla hurried back, a worried expression on her face. She stopped short, startled by the sight of someone ahead. "Go on, Layla Revelin," Matthias said. "You must finish your work." Layla approached Matthias. Due to her nearsightedness, she struggled to make out who it was. Matthias's figure gradually came into focus. "Greetings, Layla," Matthias said. Layla jumped, startled at the sight of the Duke. So, knowing I would bury them, he deliberately, that red string. That's the string I tied last year to a newly hatched bird by the banks of the Shelter River. The birds that migrated from the south after winter ended up losing their lives in the very place they were born, just for that man's petty amusement. Seeing Layla's silence, Matthias continued. Go on, Layla Revelin. Do your work. Layla bent down and continued as Matthias instructed. Matthias pressed. Was it you who tied that string? Layla replied sadly, yes. Matthias continued, why? I wanted to know if the migrating birds would return, but I didn't wish for a reunion like this. It seems you're criticizing me, but what's the problem? This is my territory, my hunting ground. I'm merely hunting my birds. But that's because you knew. The birds didn't know. To the birds, this is simply the forest where they were born and raised, the place they long to return to, no matter how far they wander. Must I understand the feelings of birds, too? That's not it. Even so, you shouldn't hunt so cruelly. Layla picked up her shovel, thinking, does the Duke know? How much courage it must take to say such words, compared to when I was young, with only an address in hand, daring to board train. Layla Revelin understands the birds, but do you understand what hunting is? Do you desire a friendly hunt? Layla thought to herself, I apologize. Your Grace, I spoke a bit presumptuously. Please forgive my rudeness. Matthias asked Layla, why are you so fond of birds? It may not be an interesting story for the Duke. Layla's response piqued Matthias's curiosity. Layla focused on burying the birds. Finally, the burial was complete. I have finished my work. Please allow me to return, Your Grace. As Layla walked away, Matthias spotted a new target. Then Matthias raised his gun. Layla returned calmly. Then Matthias's voice called out, what's this, Layla? It seems your work isn't finished yet. Layla looked up at the branches, her fear evident. I'd prefer you just tell me what wrong I've committed. Your Grace. Matthias looked at Layla. A wrong? Yes, please tell me. What have I done wrong to deserve such a dreadful punishment? I'm not punishing you. I'm doing my work, and you're simply doing yours. Wrong? I don't know. Matthias lowered his gun. Why are you so fond of birds? Layla froze, hearing Matthias's question. She recalled an unpleasant past with her mother. Her mother had left when she was young, and despite her cries, her mother had chosen to leave. Hiding that painful truth, she calmly told Matthias, because they've always been with me. When I was young, I went to many places. Wherever, whenever, birds were always there, always by my side. Birds leave when the seasons change. But if I wait, they'll come back. There isn't a season without birds, even in a place without birds. They're the freest, most beautiful beings in this world, and they've always been by my side. I love them. Layla's eyes glistened with tears. That probably seems meaningless to the Duke. Matthias's cold gaze settled on Layla. Layla wiped the tears that rolled down her cheeks. Is that all hunting is about? Matthias said coldly, if it's necessary. The two stood there, locked in a long gaze. Matthias glanced down at the pocket watch in his hand, flipping it open to check the time. Seeing it was late, Matthias said hurriedly, Layla, I prefer everything in my world to be where it should be, where it needs to be, not meaninglessly hiding or running away. Layla didn't understand what Matthias meant, so she asked, what does that mean? Matthias spoke bluntly. Stay in that place. I don't know where I should be, Duke. Matthias told Layla, think about it more carefully. You don't know. If you find the answer, perhaps I'll hunt more kindly. His figure and horse quickly disappeared into the forest. Recalling what she had said, she thought, I really don't understand where I should be. The Duke, he rode off somewhere. Matthias didn't particularly expect anything from Layla Revelin. Layla simply needed to stay in her place, as the orphan living in his forest, as the inquisitive student. After graduation, she would become a teacher, forever staying where she ought to be, just like the rules of his world. He was born into a world ruled by perfect order, and then he became the master of that world. In that order, everything was simple and clear. Being faithful to assigned roles and expectations wasn't difficult, sometimes even a little boring. A worthy successor to his grandmother and mother, a benevolent master to the servants, a brilliant soldier on the battlefield, a shrewd businessman dealing with directors. Matthias always played a certain role for everyone, and he willingly bore those roles. The people around him were no different, maintaining their predetermined roles and attitudes, emotions refined within appropriate limits, interacting in an orderly fashion. That was the world Matthias saw, heard, and learned. But the ordinary orphan living in his forest? Nothing at all. In the Duke's life, there was no space to accommodate the existence of someone useless. This was the first time he had possessed something that was Nothing at all. The feeling of possessing a being that didn't need to be anything was strange, but not bad at all. On the contrary, her emotions, exceeding appropriate limits, gave him a certain pleasure, like the moment his shot hit a flying bird. Especially those tears. He liked the way Layla cried. A woman crying is remarkably beautiful. I want to make her cry again. Pleasant music played in the room as footsteps approached and a voice called, "Duke Herhard." He turned. She said, "Did you enjoy your walk? I've been waiting for you. I heard the hunt was splendid today, wasn't it?" Everyone still seems caught up in the excitement of returning from the hunting grounds. They speak of nothing else. Of course, it would be a bit awkward if they kept talking about the hunt until the party ended. He said, "Next time, miss, you should join the hunt as well." She replied, "Thank you for the invitation, but I must decline. If I were to see blood firsthand, I might faint in front of everyone." She extended her hand to take his arm. "Soon, I plan to host a party myself at Avis. As practice for after the wedding, I will be receiving the guests personally, so Madam suggested I try practicing beforehand." He said, "My mother." "Yes, Madam is very concerned about me. She's truly thoughtful. Since this is the first party I'll be hosting, I like to invite everyone I want to invite. Is that all right, Duke Herhard?" He turned to her, a small smile playing on his lips. "As you wish, Mississippi." The short summer night passed, and a new morning arrived. Matthias thought that a gentler hunt next time wouldn't be so bad. Layla, as usual, was in the rose garden, assisting the gardener. She had returned to where she belonged. Looking out from the mansion, he mused, "See? It's simple, Layla." The scene shifted to a wing of the mansion within the garden. "I've brought the flowers, Mississippi." "Thank you, Layla." "Put them there," she replied. "If there's nothing else, I'll take my leave." Suddenly, the woman said, "Layla, could you cut a bouquet of red roses for me?" "Just one bouquet will do." Layla, her head bowed, replied, "Yes, miss," and slowly turned to leave. The ladies at the table began to gossip. "That girl, although she acts polite, her demeanor feels rather haughty, doesn't it?" "Yes. Her eyes, it's like she doesn't know her place. I don't like it one bit." The first woman defended Layla. "Don't be like that. Layla is a pitiful child. Of course, I know Layla has that flaw, but let's be lenient with her." The other two ladies shrugged. "You're far too lenient with the servants. Before you become Mrs. Arvis, it's best to discipline someone like that girl." She thought to herself, "I understand their reactions. Even I, who have observed her for so long, feel the same." A docile attitude stemming from utter indifference. Even young ladies from noble families have tried to befriend her, yet when I allowed Layla near me, she never showed joy or delight. She doesn't even try to make a good impression. It's as if she's patiently enduring. Orphans like Layla give me that feeling. A moment later, "Miss, I brought the roses. Are these enough?" She replied, "Yes, thank you, Layla. I have another gift for you today." Looking at the maid behind her, understanding dawned. "Since, as a poor orphan, you're still not used to receiving gold coins, I want to give you a gift you'll never forget. It's an invitation, Layla." The two ladies at the table were quite surprised. "What? Claudine, you're inviting her?" Layla, holding the invitation, asked, "Why are you giving me this?" Claudine replied, "Consider it my graduation gift to you. It will be a wonderful memory." These two ladies agree as well. Layla still didn't understand. The kind woman continued, "I sincerely hope you'll come. I trust you won't refuse my invitation." Hearing these words, Layla was moved to tears, unable to control herself. Matthias was browsing in a shop, glancing at a piece of jewelry, a necklace that seemed to beckon him with its allure, a string of pearls interspersed with 4 glittering emeralds. He seemed captivated by it, but in the end, he quickly turned and left. The scene shifted to a wooden house. "Good heavens, I'm so angry. I don't understand why nobles are so dreadful," Mr. Bill said. "It seems the rumor of Layla attending the party has spread, hasn't it?" His wife replied, "What else is new? Some even say Miss Brandt treats poor Layla like a pet dog. It's understandable. Ever since she was a child, whenever she was bored, she'd summon Layla. Isn't that enough? Now she's inviting her to a party full of nobles. She calls it consideration. But in such a setting, how can that poor girl possibly compose herself? Truly, Layla isn't the type to be easily fazed by such things. Just making an appearance and leaving should suffice." His wife sighed. After all these years, how could she be so heartless, not knowing how to care for her own daughter? Mr. Bill replied, "Daughter? I'm just considering where to send the girl. I haven't decided anything yet." Suddenly, his wife exclaimed, "You're only thinking about it when it's time for Layla to marry, when you're holding your grandchildren, even when you're in your grave." He, accustomed to this dialogue, simply replied, "Here we go again. I told you I was just—" "Oh, stop nagging. Let's buy Layla a beautiful dress as a surprise gift." She's a girl, after all. She'll be delighted, she suggested. He replied, I think it's a good idea too, but Layla is someone who never wants to be indebted to anyone. You know, if I said I'd buy her a dress, she'd definitely refuse. I know, she responded confidently, extending her hand. So I'll do it for you. He looked at her hand with a dubious expression, then pushed himself up from his seat and walked away. He returned holding a brown bag. Still keeping the money in that old bag? Put it in the bank. He retorted, this wooden house in Avis is much safer than a bank. But if Layla finds out about this, she'll make a fuss. His wife replied, don't worry, on the day of the party, I'll make sure Layla doesn't recognize anything. He pulled out a wad of cash. Is this enough? She answered, get a little more. For a party like that, she'll need more than just a dress. He slapped the table. All right, buy everything you need, the whole lot. His wife chuckled. It's rare to see you so generous. Good. With this, we'll make those haughty, noble women gawk at Layla's beauty. Suddenly, the door swung open. I'm home. Both of them panicked, one hiding the money, the other the bag, pretending nothing had happened. Layla asked, Mona, are you here too? His wife replied, I brought some snacks, including your favorite strawberry cake and cookies, Layla. Layla answered, then I'll quickly change and come out to eat with you. Mona quickly refused and rushed out the door. Unfortunately, I have to go now. Goodbye, Layla. What's the rush? Layla murmured, left alone with her uncle. Layla, what are you planning to do about that? I mean, about the party? She replied brightly, the party? I'm just planning to go for a little while and then come straight home. Professor Edmund has been invited too, so I'll go with Kyle. Her uncle thought to himself, that's good. It's rare that freeloader is useful for something. He said, so, Layla, don't you need anything? Like a dress. Layla stammered. A dress? No, it's okay, uncle. I'm only going for a little while anyway. That's strange. For a special occasion like this, you need to dress appropriately. Are you planning to go to a place full of nobles in your uniform? She replied with a smile. Wouldn't that be fine? Seeing her positive attitude, he was speechless. Doesn't want to trouble anyone. Tries her best not to owe anyone any favors. I clearly understand her intentions. I clearly understand, but I don't know how to coax her. I can only complain. Suddenly, she walked over and took his large, rough hands in hers, which surprised him a little. It's okay, uncle. It really is okay, she reassured him, and he simply watched her silently. They were not so different from a real father and daughter. Later that night, as Layla slept soundly, her hands suddenly gripped the blanket tightly. She woke with a start, tears in her eyes. Sitting up abruptly, she breathed slowly, trying to calm herself as she looked around. This is my room, she told herself. I had a nightmare. In the dream, I was back in my childhood, being passed from one relative's house to another. Bullied and harassed, cruelly beaten. Even then, she pleaded with them not to abandon her. Back then, to avoid being abandoned, all she could do was constantly do chores, eat less, and live in a corner like an object. But no matter how hard she tried, whenever she had to move to the next relative's house, she wouldn't cry. She would practice smiling. The more she wanted to cry, the more brightly she smiled, because no one in the world likes a crying orphan. Constantly being shuffled from place to place, she became more adept at smiling, until one day, she finally left her hometown alone and came to Burke. The smile could no longer appear, because she knew the address in her hand was her last hope. If she was abandoned again, she would have to go to an orphanage. So that day, when she met Mr. Bill's warm and compassionate gaze, she smiled with all her might. He led her to an empty room. Stay here for now, he said. The young girl, Layla, looked around, then took her first step across the threshold. The day she returned to her family, the day she had a place to call home, perhaps she would never forget it for the rest of her life. She threw open the window, letting the breeze rush in and carry away all the anxieties in her heart. It would be all right. The Duke's banquet, scheduled for tomorrow, would take place tonight. To say she wasn't nervous would be a lie, but she didn't want to dwell on worries or hesitate. She would simply attend bravely, stay quiet, and then return. Lady Claudine wouldn't know she had chosen this path. Afterwards, she would go to the kitchen and make breakfast. Her uncle, Mr. Bill, wandered out, a distant look in his eyes. I'm up, Layla. For Mr. Bill and this warm wooden house, for the sake of protecting everything she held dear, she would do anything. She smiled. Uncle, did you sleep well? The carriage waited outside the mansion. The butler adjusted Duke Matthias's attire. Everything is proceeding smoothly as instructed, master. They left about an hour ago, so the goods should have arrived by now. Matthias nodded to his butler. Then, lighting a cigarette, Matthias continued. Mother has also informed me about Claudine's invitation to Layla for the banquet, praising a good girl who understands compassion and kindness. Such words are absurd, but I don't object. If I leave it be, I might witness an interesting scene. If Layla appears in ragged clothes today, Claudine will stand before everyone and try her best to display her sympathy and pity. She'll likely relish the opportunity to crush the self-esteem of someone she despises. Therefore, I don't want Claudine to achieve what she desires. That pleasure should belong to me, and me alone. I don't know how to share my things with others. After a moment, the butler spoke hesitantly. Master, what shall we do with those items? The gifts prepared by the chef have already been delivered here through Hansen, replacing Bill Lima's. The other replacement items have also been delivered to the wooden house as gifts from Bill. Matthias stated coldly, those worthless items are no longer needed. Then Matthias ordered them to throw everything away at Bill Lima's house. Layla was astonished by the number of gifts piled up in the house. Uncle, how much did you spend? Bill didn't know how to answer her. Let me see. How much did I give Mona? I did take care of a few things, but I didn't expect this much. Clothes, shoes, gloves, they all look luxurious. Even if I don't understand much, I can tell. They're expensive. The clerk even delivered them directly. It must have cost a fortune. And that necklace. How much was that necklace? No, although I spent a considerable sum, if Layla can enjoy the banquet without losing face, it's worth it. Come on, I've taken care of everything. You don't need to worry, you silly child, fretting over useless things. But Layla was worried. Uncle, this is too much. Bill said, what? You don't like them? I think they're quite nice. Layla didn't think so. No, how could I not like them? It's just for one day. I'm only going for a little while, and then leaving. How can I let you spend so much money? I want to return these things. Bill was taken aback. What? I prepared these gifts, and now you want to return them? Layla, if you don't wear these to the banquet, I'll never look at you again. Layla's eyes widened in surprise. What? This time, Bill was truly angry. You never accept any kindness. I understand, but Layla, there's no need to draw such a clear line between people. It may seem that way, but it's all fake, cheap stuff. In my heart, I want to give you the best things in the world, but you know my situation isn't like that. Come on, if you're not even willing to accept this small gesture, then forget it. I'll take it all back and burn it as firewood. And Layla, I'll never see you again. Understand? Bill turned and stormed off, leaving Layla to stare helplessly at his retreating back. Watching Bill's face, it was clear he'd been holding these words back for a long time, worried she would hate him. Bill sat down, heartbroken. He didn't understand why he was like this. He didn't know when his emotions had spiraled out of control, leading him to say such harsh things. No matter what, he shouldn't have said he'd never see her again. Oh God, lost in the whirlwind of his temper, a voice called out beside him, Uncle. Bill was utterly surprised to see who it was. Kyle, you little rascal. I always thought of you as a child, but dressed like this, you look like quite the young man. Kyle looked curious. Why are you outside, Uncle? Where's Layla? Bill just pretended to look away. Who knows? Kyle was taken aback. Huh? Layla isn't home? The banquet is about to start. The door suddenly opened, catching both Bill and Kyle's attention. Long legs, accompanied by elegant shoes, appeared. Layla shyly stepped out. Even she seemed a little unfamiliar with herself. The dress, those eyes, and the addition of jewelry further enhanced Layla's beauty. Kyle couldn't take his eyes off her when Layla appeared in such attire. Bill put his arm around Kyle's shoulder and turned him around. Focus now. You'll be standing in for me tonight. That means protecting Layla. Can you do that? Kyle answered firmly. Of course. I'll protect her. Taking a deep breath, Kyle turned back. Layla looked down. Do I look strange? I still feel like this dress doesn't suit me. Kyle beamed. Not at all. You look beautiful. I mean it. So shall we go? Miss Layla, please bear with me today. Today is a special day. Think of it as not just a friend, but my partner tonight, Mr. Edmund. Hearing those words, Layla felt more confident. Okay, I'll do my best. Uncle, we're off. Bill waved goodbye. Yes, go on. I just hope you don't get hurt today and have a wonderful time, Layla. The mansion bustled with activity, the entire area illuminated by lights, blending with the soft melody of the music. Layla had been worried about her attire. Kyle reassured her, telling her it was all right and not to be so nervous. Just trust your partner tonight. The two of them also caught Matthias's attention. He cast his gaze towards Layla, his eyes fixed on her and Kyle. His expression grew more serious. Hassan truly was a perfect butler, as evident from Layla's appearance. Even without elaborate makeup or extravagant clothing, Layla still radiated her own beauty. The emerald necklace on her pale neck also made her stand out. I saw that necklace in a window display on my way to an appointment. Its clear green, like a summer forest, left a deep impression on me. On my way back to the manor, I had Hessen buy it for me, as I imagined her eyes would sparkle like emeralds. It seemed Layla also noticed Duke Matthias was watching her. It startled her. His gaze didn't leave her for a moment. Layla quickly averted her eyes. She didn't want to face him right now. Matthias maintained the same expression, but seemed somewhat displeased. A man approached. It's been a while. Duke Ahard, how are you? But Matthias was preoccupied with other thoughts. Even while conversing and greeting acquaintances, his senses were constantly drawn elsewhere. Tonight, the doctor's son will proudly escort Layla, as if she were his own, even though she wears clothes that belong to me. Claudine introduced Layla to everyone, and they all welcomed her warmly. So you're the friend who's been with Miss Layla all this time. It's a pleasure to meet you, but the name doesn't sound familiar. She's an orphan, adopted and raised by the gardener of the Arvis estate. Claudine looked at Layla and smiled, then said she was a lost orphan, and thanks to the permission of Duke Ahad and his wife, she was able to stay here. That's how we met. Don't worry, despite her difficult circumstances, Layla has grown into a worthy individual. She's preparing to become a teacher after graduation. Isn't this wonderful? Everyone admires Claudine so much. Miss Layla is also excellent, but Miss Claudine's kindness is truly admirable. Perhaps that's why the Hagar family treasures you so. I hear you're about to be engaged. Congratulations. Claudine chuckled softly. I'm a bit embarrassed to receive congratulations before the news is officially announced. Everyone's saying Duke Ahad has just arrived, and Matthias wants to stay by Claudine's side as well. Claudine gestured happily to Matthias. Your Grace, you've arrived at the perfect moment. These are my friends, and I'd like to introduce you. This is Miss Bertha of the Count Maitner family, and this is Miss Gritz of the Marquis family. Layla prayed they wouldn't notice her. This is Layla. Do you remember? We went to a cafe together once. Matthias neither smiled nor spoke. Layla, afraid to look up, simply murmured, Hello, Your Grace. It was strange. A child who, no matter how humiliated, always remained as calm as a still lake, was blushing in the Duke's presence, flustered to this degree. As her mother had suggested, was it inappropriate to have such a girl near Matthias? In truth, on the day they all went hunting in the forest, Claudine couldn't shake a feeling of unease. That day, Duke Ahad said he wanted to walk alone in the forest, telling the others to return first, not coming back to the estate until the sun set in the evening. Usually, there wouldn't be anything strange about that, but something felt very suspicious that day. Had the Duke truly just been walking until evening? And Layla, with her meager circumstances, how could she possibly be wearing such magnificent attire tonight? Emeralds, diamonds, even pearls, all meticulously crafted, too exquisite and beautiful to be fake. If someone had given Layla a necklace like that, Kyle suddenly appeared. Excuse me for interrupting, but may I steal away my dance partner? My friends would like to meet Layla as well. Claudine was astonished. It wasn't Duke Ahad who had transformed Layla into a princess tonight, but Kyle Edmund, the doctor's son. Even if she came with a dance partner, we can't monopolize Layla. Claudine couldn't believe it. Impossible. No matter how wealthy his family, he was still just a doctor's son. As they walked away, Claudine called out to Layla, You look beautiful today, especially that necklace. Layla, bewildered, simply thanked her. Then Claudine turned to Matthias. The necklace suits Miss Layla very well, doesn't it, Your Grace? Matthias replied curtly, It's adequate. His response seemed to satisfy Claudine. Free at last, Layla murmured her thanks to Kyle. He simply questioned, Why do you put up with them? They treat you like a joke, humiliate you. Why would someone as proud and intelligent as Layla endure it silently like a fool? Layla wasn't being submissive. It's not entirely wrong in any case. I'm an orphan, indebted to Uncle Bill, and I'm going to be a teacher. Don't worry, I don't mind those words. Kyle was exasperated with Layla. Layla leaned against the railing. Human nature is multifaceted, Ethan, but Kyle felt it was too much for one person to bear. Regardless, you're quite the eloquent speaker. Layla subtly dismissed Kyle. You can go now. You have many people to meet, and your mother is waiting for you, too. Kyle stated, I came as your dance partner today, so I'll stay by your side. That's what I want. Why aren't you saying anything? Layla avoided his gaze. I just don't know anymore. Kyle teased her. Don't tell me you're so embarrassed your face is red. Layla covered her face. Really, I'm not. Then his mother arrived. Kyle, what are you doing here? I've been looking everywhere for you. Do you know how important today is? Come quickly. Someone wants to meet you. Kyle, are you joking with me? Even Lady Norma is looking for you. You wouldn't keep her waiting, would you? Layla nudged him. Go with your mother, Kyle. I'll wait for you here. Kyle's mother nodded. Thank you for your understanding, Layla. Kyle said worriedly. I'll be right back, so you have to wait, okay? Layla smiled and waved. Lost in her own thoughts, Layla listened to the melody of the music. The music is so beautiful. She thought, my role here is done. Now all that's left is to wait quietly for Kyle. The music continued to play, but something caught Layla's eye. Looking at her reflection in the window, Layla remembered what her uncle, Bill, had said to her. He said they were suitable. She mused, but to me, these things are more beautiful than I deserve. This dress feels as soft as a cloud, and the shoes are adorned with such delicate embroidery. And this necklace, I never imagined I would wear such beautiful imitation jewels. The thought of Claudine's earlier comment surfaced. Perhaps that's why Miss Claudine said what she did. Perhaps it wasn't entirely a compliment, but a subtle form of mockery or pity. But it doesn't matter. It's a gift from Uncle Bill, and that's enough. Suddenly, Layla noticed someone. It was Dukahad. Miss Claudine and Matthias saw her too. Then his gaze returned to Claudine. A strange feeling stirred within Layla. He always seems so melancholic. Claudine rested her hand on the railing. The night air is so refreshing. I adore summer because the nights are always so beautiful like this. What about you, Dukahad? Matthias replied coolly. I don't particularly favor summer, Miss Claudine. Claudine continued. That's surprising. I thought you would enjoy summer. Dukahad, you're such a cold man. Of course, I'm not blaming you, you know. Actually, I rather like that coldness about you. You always maintain your composure and that elegant, aristocratic air. Claudine stepped closer to Matthias. Duke, kiss me. I adore the Duke's aloofness, but there should be at least a little passion between us, shouldn't there? Matthias deliberately emphasized, a little passion. That's a rather compelling observation. Then Matthias touched Claudine's neck, his gaze softening with a warm smile. In that hazy moment, Matthias imagined it was Layla, recalling the memory of them standing together in the moonlight. Matthias suddenly snapped back to reality, his attention still fixed on Layla's expression. He slowly brought his lips to Claudine's. The sight of them kissing outside the manor was witnessed only by Layla. Claudine's shoulders trembled, while Matthias's eyes remained locked on Layla, as if searching for her reaction. That expression, Layla wondered why she kept watching them. She, too, recalled the moment Matthias had touched her lips, gently soothing them. Suddenly, and inexplicably, Layla blushed. She turned and walked away, leaving without waiting for Kyle. The door slammed shut. Matthias watched Layla the entire time. Their lips parted, and Claudine felt a surge of triumph. The night was exceptionally beautiful. Matthias said, Shall we go back now, Miss Claudine? Their hands touched again, and Claudine smiled. I'm certain, Dukahad, that we will make a wonderful couple. Layla ran until she was breathless. She stopped, bending down to touch her shoes. The shoes Uncle bought me are stained with blood. I just want to go home now. What should I do? I promised to wait, so I should go back. But I don't have the courage. Maybe I should sit in the garden for a while and go over after Kyle returns. It should be alright to sit here, right? I'm a guest today. Layla slipped off her shoes. No matter how much I think about it, I can't understand. How could they do that? They knew someone was there. Maybe they just didn't care. In their eyes, servants are no different from objects. Layla dwelled on the moment. Why'd he do that? It's disgusting. The lights in the room were exceptionally bright. Kyle's mother said happily, How could they bestow such a great favor? This is wonderful, madam. She responded with a smile. It's nothing compared to Dr. Edmund's dedication. As our family doctor, it's common knowledge that Baron Ant's family is a prestigious one. A suitable match between our two families would be advantageous for both sides. Kyle's mother beamed, her satisfaction evident. Baron Ant has a daughter around the same age as my Edmund. It's high time we considered marriage. Such a marvelous opportunity, presenting itself so opportunely. Yet my only son remains infatuated with that orphan, Layla. If he continues down this path, I'll have no choice but to intervene. She paused, turning to another woman. Madam, if it wouldn't be too much trouble, might I offer my greetings to them now? The woman readily agreed. Of course, Lady Edmund. They'll be attending the party this evening as well. It wouldn't hurt to greet them in advance. They've summoned Baron and Baroness Aunt Grandmother herself arranged this match. While they lack a title, The Edmund family is far wealthier than the aunts, and their reputation is no less esteemed. If the two families were to become more closely connected, despite the disparity in status, it would still be a sensible marriage. Kyle made a move to leave, but his mother's grip tightened on his arm. This is a party I've prepared for you. It would be impolite to leave. Say no more, just stay here. A mother brimming with love and expectations for her son. And the son, despite his desire to leave, couldn't bear to disappoint his mother. If that's the case, then so be it. Matthias lowered his glass, a knowing glint in his eyes. The obedient son's naive first love. The ending was already clear. Kyle would forever play the role of the dutiful, well-mannered son, while Layla would be discarded, a casualty of his mother's ambition and his own compliance. Ultimately, she would remain here in my forest where she belonged. In the garden, Matthias found Layla sitting dejectedly on a bench. He watched her with a softened gaze. Layla had fallen asleep. Matthias approached, bending down to study her sleeping face more closely. He then sat beside her, his gaze unwavering. The wound on Layla's foot was bleeding, staining her shoe crimson. Layla's eyes fluttered open drowsily. "Your Grace," she murmured. As Matthias picked up her shoe and stood, Layla startled awake. "My shoe. Should I return this to you?" Matthias asked. Layla quickly replied, "Yes, please." Before returning the shoe, Matthias made a peculiar request. "Then, try crying." Layla was bewildered. What? Take something precious from someone and then tell them to cry? Does he always find ways to toy with people for his own amusement? Layla's sorrowful eyes seemed to be waiting for something, someone. If only Kyle would come now, she thought. Matthias noticed and followed Layla's gaze, aware of whom she awaited. So, he stated bluntly, "He won't come. Kyle Edmund, the one you're waiting for." "No, that's not true, Your Grace. Kyle is a man of his word." "Really? You seem quite certain." "I know Kyle better than you do." "Your Grace, don't be so confident." Layla looked at Matthias hesitantly. "I truly don't understand why Your Grace dislikes me so much." "Let me see. The reasons I detest you. Detesting you improves my mood. When you cry, I find it amusing. When you plead, I'm delighted." Matthias's response angered Layla. "How can you say such things?" "Layla, I'm merely answering your question. You wouldn't treat others this way, would you?" "Then why only me?" Matthias answered curtly. "Because it's you, Layla. Not anyone else, but you and nobody." Matthias's words stung. Even those relatives who once spoke cruel words and chased me away, or my drunken uncle who beat me daily, no one has ever trampled on my heart like this. I apologize to Your Grace for being a nobody and daring to remain on your land. If that's the case, you shouldn't have allowed me in from the beginning." Matthias questioned, "Don't you think that's too heartless?" Layla's eyes welled up. "You've been heartless enough. So, what do you intend to do now? Cast me out?" Matthias said calmly, "No, don't worry. You're still useful. I'm simply saying, you're a nobody," Matthias said, looking at Layla. "That's your role." Layla was about to apologize to Matthias again, but before she could speak, Matthias stopped her. "Don't apologize anymore." He stepped closer. "The Kyle Edmund you're waiting for isn't coming. So Layla, cry. Beg if you want to." Inside the opulent manor, everyone was merrily enjoying the party. "Cheers, Matthias." Matthias recalled Layla's image. Layla cried. She cried beautifully. So, I was willing to return the shoes. When I left the garden and reached the end of the promenade, Layla was still standing there, tears streaming down her face. Those tears, shed because of me, belonged entirely to me. The funny thing is, those tears erased the discomfort I felt when looking at her, and that indescribable feeling I had when I kissed Claudine while looking at her. Matthias was lost in thought about Layla. Suddenly, Layla's figure brushed past him. Today, Layla realized the clear boundary between herself and that boy, the meaning of their differing social standings, and the reason why that boy hadn't come to find her in the end. Layla spoke to a servant. "Please tell Kyle I left early." Layla hurried away. Matthias called out to the servant. "Master, what do you need? Get Count Klein for me. He's on the second-floor balcony." The servant immediately left. Matthias knew the Count wouldn't come. He'd already left earlier. Calling for him was just a pretext, a way to buy time. While the servants searched for the Count, Layla quickly left the garden with her familiar, determined stride. Someone fiercely protective of what belonged to her, but who wouldn't linger where she didn't belong. She didn't look back once, as if she had no reason left to stay. day. The servant returned. I'm sorry, master. Mr. Klein has already departed. Matthias replied calmly. Is that so? Thank you. Matthias returned to the party. Halfway there, he stopped. He looked down at Kyle's table. Kyle Edmund, even if the doctor's son heard Layla's message and belatedly left his mother's side to look for her, it wouldn't change anything. Layla is gone now, and this tedious summer evening party will continue. The next morning, at Layla's house. Uncle, we really need to leave now. If we continue like this, we'll miss the train. As Layla was closing the door, Uncle Bill asked, Are you really all right? You'll be alone for a few days. I'm Fina. It's only 3 days. Besides, it's your brother's funeral. You have to go. Uncle Bill sighed. Even though we haven't seen each other for decades, my absence probably wouldn't be a big deal. Don't worry, I'll be fine. Uncle Bill replied, Yes, I know, but Layla, did anything happen between you and Kyle at the party? Layla immediately said, Me and Kyle? No, nothing happened. That's good. But strangely, I haven't seen that boy lately. Layla told her uncle, We've both been busy recently. Kyle is also preparing for his university entrance exams. Oh, right, that must be it. You two are so close. I was overthinking it. Well, Layla, if you're too scared to stay home alone, have Kyle come over and keep you company in my place. Just after saying that, Uncle Bill became uneasy. No, I can't trust him with that either. He instructed Layla, You haven't forgotten what I told you, have you? Always keep the doors locked. And even if it's hot, keep the windows closed. The shotgun is hanging in my room. If you need it, Layla quickly finished her uncle's sentence. Take it to bed, right? If there are any bad guys, I'll shoot immediately. Eat well, study hard. Is that all? Uncle Bill looked at Layla again. One more thing. If Kyle comes over, send him home before sunset. If he refuses to leave, hit him with a shovel. Kyle startled. Really? Uncle Bill continued, his gaze fixed on Kyle. That day I saw it. He's a man now, and the way he looks at you, it's different. Just think, that boy is the most dangerous kind. Layla, embarrassed, stammered. Uncle, what are you saying? That's so strange. Uncle Bill let out a hearty laugh. I'm just teasing, just a joke. All right, go on inside. I've already spoken to Mrs. Mona. If you need anything, just ask her, okay? Layla nodded. Yes, Uncle. Be careful. Uncle Bill waved goodbye. I'm off then. Though she'd feigned composure in front of her uncle, assuring him she was fine, the next 3 days stretched before her, promising to be agonizingly long. A bird perched on Kyle's windowsill. A small note tied to its leg. Kyle noticed it and went to retrieve it. I'm sorry, Kyle. You shouldn't come to the cottage today. Uncle Bill is going back to his hometown, so he'll be gone for a few days. I have an appointment with a classmate at the library and won't be back until after dinner, so don't wait for me. See you next time. Bye. Kyle tossed the note onto the table, his heart sinking. It's been days, and it's always the same note. Dates, outings, gardening, and now the library. At first, I was just suspicious, but now I'm certain. Layla's avoiding me. It's understandable. If I were her, I'd do the same. I said I'd stay by her side, protect her, but I left Layla all alone. Kyle's mother, witnessing his despair, scolded him. You idiot, why do you always torture yourself like this? He muttered, I'm so despicable. I can't stand myself anymore. I should have left that place sooner, but why couldn't I? So cowardly. I have a bad feeling. If this continues, I'll lose her forever. Suddenly, Kyle stood up. No, I have to see Layla directly. I have to talk to her. Layla was outside by the clothesline, carefully hanging each garment. Kyle called out to her from a distance. Layla heard him. It sounds like someone's calling me. She was surprised to see Kyle. Kyle rushed towards her. I'm so sorry, Layla. I was wrong. No, don't say that. I was the one who lied. Why are you apologizing? Layla quickly countered. No, it's all my fault. I understand why you did what you did. I promised I'd stay by your side, that I'd be right back, but I didn't keep my promise. I'm sorry, Layla. It won't happen again. Layla explained. Kyle, I'm not angry or upset about that day. Really? Then why? Why have you been avoiding me? Layla hesitated, unsure what to say. Honestly, I'm not angry with you, Kyle. It's just that day I was suddenly reminded of a truth I've been trying to forget. That you and I belong to two completely different worlds. Or maybe I've always known, just deliberately ignored it. My unhappy childhood. Layla's mind drifted back to her childhood, the day she first met Kyle. Edmund, my name is Kyle. What's yours? It was the first time someone had extended a hand to her in friendship. I'm Layla. Layla Llewellyn. Kyle had replied cheerfully, Layla Llewellyn. It's nice to meet you, Layla. No pity, no disdain. Kyle had climbed a tree with her, pointing at the fledglings nestled in the branches. You mean these little birds? Kyle had marveled. Wow, they're so small. Amazing. Are there other places like this? Layla had led him on, eager to share her secret places. Yes, follow me. He just genuinely reached out to me. Those warm memories and feelings, they're as precious to me as meeting Uncle Bill. Layla remembered bringing Kyle home. Uncle, Kyle's here to play. Kyle had greeted her uncle politely. Hello, sir. You're Kyle. He blurted out, if you don't mind, can I have dinner with everyone, Mr. Bill? Of course, come in. Why do children have to grow up? The memory brought a pang of pure sadness. When I got home, I decided something for you, my dear friend. I'll let go first. Layla set down her teacup. Kyle, I think it's time we kept our distance. Hearing this, Kyle's eyes widened. What are you saying? Did you see that day? Yes, and this is the right thing to do. Kyle, this is the only way we can stay friends forever. What are you talking about? We have to separate to be good friends? Do you know how unreasonable you sound? Layla said frankly, no, this is how I truly feel. I don't want to lose you. Who said anything about losing you? I don't want to lose you either. Layla's eyes flickered as she looked at Kyle. We can't separate. That can't happen. Kyle hurriedly interrupted Layla, tightly gripping her hand. I'll never lose you, and I won't leave you for that reason either. Layla quickly withdrew her hand. Kyle, it's finally time for us to grow up. Layla stood up. Let's have lunch, and then you should go, Kyle. I'll get ready quickly. Kyle stared blankly at the hand that had just held Layla's, then slowly placed it on the table. Rhett was reading the newspaper. She saw a bird land on Matthias's head, then hop down to perch on his shoulder. How can that bird be so lucky? Even in this heat, Duke Jihad is wearing tight, ornate clothing. How can that bird play with him so freely, without a care in the world? I never imagined someone like Matthias would keep a bird as a pet like that, especially with the look on his face. It's a sight I still can't get used to. Rhett whispered to Claudine, why don't you try wearing a yellow dress to the engagement ceremony? I think if you do, the Duke will take a liking to you, just like that bird. Claudine replied, no, I hate yellow, and it's just superficial. Rhett laughed. Really? You'll be the most powerful woman in our social circle, so a yellow dress definitely wouldn't suit the occasion. Besides, you'll be a noble woman who even surpasses the future queen, so you need to control your appearance. Claudine immediately said, Rhett, are you starting again? What? It's what everyone's saying. I've been wondering something, Claudine. After becoming a member of the Jihad family, how do you feel about practically becoming a princess? Claudine was silent for a moment, then pricked Rhett's hand with a needle. She pinched me, really. Claudine said coldly, stop joking, Rhett. By the way, Matthias, when are you retiring from the military? After your engagement, can't you just focus on your family's business? Matthias replied, I'm not sure. It wouldn't hurt to stay in the military for another year or two. Even so, I only say that because it's a Jihad family tradition. But it seems you're even more loyal to our country, Duke Matthias. After retiring, you'll surely become one of the most powerful dukes your family has ever seen. Suddenly, Rhett exclaimed, I can't believe your engagement is coming up soon. It feels so strange. Matthias took the small bird in his hand, placed it in its cage, and said, well then, you two can rest here a while longer. Rhett asked Matthias, where are you going, Matthias? Matthias said as he walked away, the annex. I have a lot of work to do. It was a sudden impulse, this desire to go to the annex. I've been thinking about going to the annex, burying myself in work until dinner. Indeed, that was the plan until I left the mansion. Yet, when I abruptly stopped and began to look around, I found myself standing on the path leading to the gardener's cottage. Matthias loosened his tie, longing to feel it through her eyes. All my senses focused on that, as that uncontrollable heat began to build deep within me. There are times when my will cannot suppress those vibrations and moments of weakness. Every time I realize I'm swayed by these feelings, the discomfort within me grows. Longing is not something that should be prioritized on my life's checklist, and certainly not for Layla either. Lost in thought, Matthias Llewellyn suddenly realized, perhaps that's precisely why I want to explore it further. The limits of these emotions. Suddenly, Layla's cry for help came from the garden. Help! Is anyone nearby? No. I think if I push any harder, the branch will break. Calm down. I have to stay calm, just a little longer. If I can reach it, I can, Layla stammered, her voice trembling. Please. Layla's shoes slipped, tumbling to the ground below. A wave of terror washed over her. If I fall from here, I'll at least break a leg, she thought in a panic. Why did this have to happen while Uncle Bill is away? Just a few minutes earlier, after lunch with Kyle, Layla had been seeing him off when a faint chirping caught her ear. She traced the sound, discovering a tiny bird huddled on the ground, peeping plaintively. Where am I? I'm so scared. It seemed to cry. Layla realized it must be a fledgling from the nest in a large tree in the backyard. You fell from your nest, didn't you? She murmured to the tiny creature. It's a long way down, but at least you don't seem hurt. Don't worry, I'll get you home. Carefully, she placed the bird back in its nest. Bye-bye. Be careful. You need to be more careful from now on, she whispered. Now all she had to do was get down safely herself. As luck would have it, just as she began her descent, she'd slipped, only managing to grasp a nearby branch and narrowly avoiding a disastrous fall. However, it seemed only a matter of time before she plummeted to the ground. She had no idea how much longer the branch could hold her weight. If Kyle hadn't left yet, maybe he could hear her. Kyle, come back. I need help. Kyle, she cried desperately. Matthias strolled into the garden and saw the discarded shoe lying before him, while Layla's frantic calls for Kyle echoed from the tree above. He looked up. What are you doing, Layla Llewellyn? Why do you enjoy climbing trees so much? Shall I help you? Layla abruptly fell silent, a look of confusion spreading across her face. That voice, it definitely wasn't Kyle. It was the Duke. Layla squeezed her eyes shut and called out for Kyle again, her voice even more desperate. Kyle, I don't think he's coming, Matthias observed dryly. Layla glared down at Matthias. Go away. Why are you just standing there if you're not going to help? You're clearly about to fall, and yet you're begging for help. I'm not that heartless, Matthias retorted. What are you talking about? Layla cried. If you like, I can call for the Edmund you're shouting for, Matthias continued. But considering your height, I think it would be better to call his father. Layla bristled. If my legs still work after I fall, the first thing I'll do is kick you like a pebble on the road, like a weak tree about to drop its fruit. But I'm really at my limit. I can't take it anymore. Oh, really? Then call me, Matthias said smoothly. Layla was exasperated. What? Call me to help you, he repeated. I'd rather let myself fall than ask someone like you to save me. But the branch keeps shaking, and I'm scared because it's so high. Before I knew it, I started calling for him because he was my last hope. Your Grace. Layla's grip finally gave way, and she lost her hold on the branch. Seeing this, Matthias swiftly moved forward, catching her in his arms and holding her tightly. He caught me. I could guess how smug he must have looked at that moment, but I was too embarrassed to look. I fell from such a height, but I didn't feel any pain. I just felt a little dizzy, and my heart was racing.